Chapter 421. After the love-struck man left, the woman in charge of the elixir store across the street seemed to have noticed this scene. She suspiciously looked at the tightly shut metal doors of the Cloud Mist restaurant. The closing time of the restaurant seems to have come earlier today. The woman couldn't help but think. All of a sudden, her eyes shrank. In her line of sight, a resplendent radiance suddenly gushed out from the tightly shut doors of the store. What is going on inside the store? The woman blinked her eyes. Curiosity suddenly welled up in her heart. Bufong was slightly astonished. This was the first time he saw the system renovating the store. In front of him, the entire store seemed to have brightened up. A resplendent radiance burst forth from within. The walls of the store were all lit up with incandescent radiance. The radiance was extremely dazzling. Bufong couldn't help but slightly squint his eyes. A rumbling sound reverberated in his ears. It seemed to be the sound of tables and chairs colliding with each other. Bufong looked at the various flickering shadows within the store. It was as if a whirlwind was sweeping through the interior of the store. The wind blew gently, snapping the velvet rope that tied Bufong's hair. His head of black hair hung loosely over his shoulders. It was rather elegant. After a long while, the radiance within the store gradually dissipated. Thereafter, a brand new appearance appeared in front of Bufong. Looking at the brand new store, Bufong's eyes lit up in an instant. The area of the store didn't change much. However, the style of the decorations was exactly the same as Fong Fong's little store in the Light Wind Imperial City. One could even say that it was more artistic. At the corner of the wall, there was also a 5 stripes path understanding tree. This path understanding tree emitted a wave of spirit energy that made one's mind clear. As Bufong stood in the store, he actually felt as if he had returned to the store in the Light Wind Imperial City. On the menu at the back of the store, the dishes displayed had undergone a huge change. Once again, there were only 3 dishes on the menu. One was egg fried rice, 10 crystals per serving. One was sweet-in sour ribs, 50 crystals per serving. One was the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, which cost 10,000 crystals each. Compared to the densely packed menu in the Light Wind Imperial City, the dishes in the Cloud Mist restaurant were much rarer. However, they were all premium dishes. Egg fried rice, sweet and sour ribs, and Buddha jumps over the wall soup were the most classic dishes in Fong Fong's little store. It was just that Bufong didn't expect that there would be 3 basic dishes. It would be amazing in the future. Looking at the menu, Bufong suddenly had an idea. He strode toward the direction of the kitchen and directly entered it. There was only a stove in the kitchen, which belonged to him. As for the other things, they were no different from the ones in the store in the Light Wind Imperial City. The tools are all the same. As expected, the system was not creative at all. The kitchen did not change at all. However, this was also good. Bufong raised the corner of his mouth and raised his hand to touch the cold metal stove. He couldn't help but reveal a trace of intoxication on his face. This kitchen was the kitchen he was familiar with. With a hook of his finger, Bufong hooked the kitchen knife in the knife rack on the stove into his hand. The muscles on his hand trembled, and the kitchen knife instantly spun in his palm. The knife flickered, and the cold air was oppressive. With a hook of his foot, Bufong pulled open the cabinet and took out a piece of Russian cloud pork. With a turn of the knife, he started to quickly cut the pork. His knife skill had reached the limit of the meteor knife skill. When he used it, it was extremely dazzling. Cutting meat was simply a piece of cake. In just a short while, the Russian cloud pork was completely cut by Bufong. Each piece was as thin as a cicada's wing. With a horizontal sweep of the knife, he picked up the pork. Then, he pulled open the cabinet and took out a blue and white porcelain plate. He placed the pork on it. Bufong was a little happy in his heart. He tried the stove, and that familiar feeling intoxicated him. All of his movements were as smooth as the clouds and as smooth as water. Host, the renovation of the store has been completed. The business hours will start tomorrow. Host, please come up with a dish that can make the Cloud Mist restaurant famous within 3 days. Just when Bufong was rejoicing, the system's voice resounded in Bufong's mind. Bufong was startled. He rubbed his chin and sank into deep thought. He had already thought of a new dish. He had really thought about it. This dish was extremely famous in his previous life. It could be said that its name had spread all over the country, and it could even be said that it had spread all over the world. Almost everyone who had eaten it would never forget the taste of that dish. Moreover, the easiest way to achieve this dish was to attract people's attention. If there was still someone who didn't notice the cloud mist restaurant when this dish appeared, then there was definitely something wrong with their nose. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth curled up. He felt quite interested, and it seemed that this dish made him slightly eager to try it out. Bu Fong took out a big pile of spirit herbs from the system's dimensional storage. After picking and choosing, he chose 10 kinds of spirit herbs. He crushed these spirit herbs, squeezed out the juice, and placed it in a big bucket. He would keep it for later use. After exchanging some fermented beans from his system, he boiled the fermented beans with clean water. After that, he poured the filtered juice into the big bucket, stirring it to ferment. Bu Fong placed the big bucket of juice into the cabinet prepared by the system. This cabinet had the effect of compressing time. Of course, after a while, Bu Fong would open the cabinet and stir it. While waiting for the juice to ferment, Bu Fong began to process the main ingredients. He spent the whole morning making a lot of tofu. The shining white tofu emitted steam. It was warm and tender, and the fragrance made Bu Fong take in a deep breath. He really cherished this fragrance. After a while, he wouldn't be able to smell this fragrance anymore. The dish he chose was an exquisite dish, which was different from the dishes that Bu Fong had cooked in the past. In the past, Bu Fong's dishes were all fragrant to the extreme. However, this time, the dish he chose was extremely stinky. Since it was difficult to attract customers' attention, Bu Fong would go to the extreme and let them stink to their heart's content. Moreover, Bu Fong didn't have a good attitude toward the people who had lined up all the way to his restaurant's entrance. Since they liked to line up so much, then they should continue to line up. Once the stinky tofu was brought out, if they could continue to line up, then they would be considered formidable. At that time, Bu Fong wanted to see who in Heavenly Mist City wouldn't pay attention to the Cloud Mist restaurant. After putting away the tofu he had prepared, Bu Fong opened the cabinet. After the time compressing effect of the cabinet, the brine in the wooden bucket had also been processed. Bu Fong's eyes twitched. The moment he opened the cabinet, an unpleasant stench accompanied by a wave of spirit energy gushed out. This stench wasn't very obvious, but it made Bu Fong smack his lips. He placed the wooden bucket on the ground. Bu Fong took out some green alum and sprinkled it into the bucket filled with the stinky brine. Gurgle! The pitch-black brine in the wooden bucket instantly started to boil, and a few bubbles appeared. The stench became even more intense, and it surged into Bu Fong's face. In an instant, Bu Fong's face darkened. This stench, it was so King sour. Bu Fong covered his nose and placed the white and tender tofu into the stinky wooden bucket. Looking at the white and tender tofu sinking into the wooden bucket, Bu Fong grinned. He was actually a little excited in his heart. After the tofu was soaked for about 4 hours, Bu Fong fished it out. The tofu that was fished out had been soaked in the brine, and it had turned a little black. The stench emitted from the tofu caused Bu Fong to feel dizzy. Honestly speaking, the smell of the stinky tofu was really unpleasant. However, its taste was surprisingly good. Only the stinky tofu could have two extremes. It could be said to be a weirdo in the world of dishes. Green smoke curled up from his arm, and the black turtle constellation wok appeared. After pouring the oil into the wok, he spat out a mouthful of 10,000 bestial flames. The temperature in the kitchen instantly rose. He stretched out his palm and felt the oil on the surface. When the oil temperature reached a temperature that was hot enough for his hand, Bu Fong then placed the tofu that had been soaked in the brine into the wok and started to fry it. Sizzle. After being fried, the stench of the stinky tofu was instantly dispersed along with the evaporation of the oil. That smell made Bu Fong's face turn a little bitter. Mantis Shrimp, who was lying on his back, was very excited, and its little feet were moving around. When the oil temperature in the wok reached a boiling point, the little guy excitedly jumped off Bu Fong's shoulder. It rotated 360 degrees in the air, and with a plop, it fell into the wok. However, the moment it entered the wok, a thick stench rolled out. The little guy was stunned, and in the next moment, it started to struggle in the wok. With a swing of its tail, its figure instantly leaped out of the wok. The spirit energy in its body surged, and after evaporating the oil, it immediately curled up on Bufong's shoulder. It lay there, spitting golden foam from its mouth, and didn't move an inch. If he had to use a phrase to describe his current state of mind, then it could only be described as numb-skinned. Bufong chuckled. This naughty little guy was really smelly. He fished out the stinky tofu, which had been fried until it was pitch black and had a hint of burnt yellow. After draining the oil, he poured it into a bowl. He used a pair of chopsticks to poke a small hole in the middle of the fried, stinky tofu, and the stench became even thicker. Bufong poured the seasoning on the stinky tofu, and a bowl of stinky tofu was completed. Looking at the exquisite, pitch-black stinky tofu with a hint of burnt yellow in the bowl, Bufong couldn't help but smack his lips. This bowl of stinky tofu was the first dish that Bufong planned to release in the Cloud Mist branch. He definitely wanted to give everyone in Heavenly Mist City a pleasant surprise. Since the aroma couldn't attract their attention, then he would use the stench. The surrounding elixir stores would see whether the fragrance of your multi-taste fasting pill or the stench of my stinky tofu was stronger. The corners of Bufong's mouth curled up. He used a pair of chopsticks to pick up a piece of stinky tofu. Xiaopi rolled its eyes, and after moving closer to Bufong, it once again lay on Bufong's shoulder, spitting golden foam from its mouth. Bufong glanced at Xiaopi, and with an expressionless face, he stuffed the pitch-black stinky tofu into his mouth. In the next moment, Bufong took a deep breath. Chapter 422. The stinky tofu was a weirdo in the world of dishes. It smelled extremely stinky, but when eaten, it was extremely fragrant. It was the kind of delicacy that made people unable to stop eating it. This kind of extreme situation made the stinky tofu in his previous life become the favorite of many people. Although Bufong was a chef in his previous life, he rarely ate the stinky tofu because he was a clean freak. Thus, when he smelled the stinky tofu's aroma, he was somewhat reluctant to eat it. However, today, in order to make the Cloud Mist restaurant famous in the Heavenly Mist City, Bufong had no choice but to try the stinky tofu. The stinky tofu, which had been fried to a pitch-black color, was emitting a stinky odor. It was really unpleasant. Before it entered his mouth, Bufong's face darkened. It was somewhat difficult for Bufong to swallow it, and he almost gave up after swallowing it several times. However, when he stuffed a piece of the stinky tofu in his mouth, Bufong didn't reject it anymore. Perhaps it was because he was already familiar with the stinky odor. When the stinky tofu entered his mouth, he chewed on the crispy fried skin, and the creamy tofu flesh entered his mouth. Bufong's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help but feel incredulous as he savored the taste of the tofu in his mouth. When it was extremely stinky, it would be considered fragrant. Bufong's words were somewhat reasonable. As he chewed on the stinky tofu in his mouth, Bufong unexpectedly didn't dislike the stinky odor. This was because he could no longer feel the stinky odor of the stinky tofu in his mouth. The taste wasn't as bad as he had imagined, and it was surprisingly good. A kind of mellow fragrance, which was different from the stinky odor, burst out in his mouth. It was like a bomb that had been prepared for a long time, and if one wasn't careful, it would explode unknowingly. It was like a clear stream in the midst of the stinky odor, and it slowly seeped into one's body and mind. It made one's entire body calm down. After he threw the stinky odor to the back of his mind, he wholeheartedly experienced the rare mellow fragrance of the stinky tofu. It was a fragrance that made one unable to stop eating. Bufong couldn't help but nod as he ate. Xiaopi, who was lying on Bufong's shoulder, finally came back to her senses after spitting out golden foam. She looked at the stinky tofu in Bufong's hand with lingering fear. However, when it saw that Bufong was actually grabbing that stinky thing and stuffing it into his mouth, it was shocked. Xiaopi was completely stunned. The next day, Bufong got up early and washed up. After arriving at the restaurant's kitchen, Bufong felt very comfortable after the system's renovation. The aroma of the stinky tofu from yesterday had completely disappeared. The restaurant's air cleaning function saved Bu Fong a lot of effort. After practicing his knife skills in the kitchen for a while, Bu Fong came to the door and pulled it open with a creak. Warm sunlight shone in through the open door, dispelling the haze that had settled in the store for an entire night. Bu Fong exhaled gently, stood at the door, and looked out of the store. There were already some noises outside the shop. There was an endless stream of people. The elixir store across the street was still bustling with business. The red-haired woman with a voluptuous figure was still selling elixirs in an orderly manner. The fragrance emanating from her elixir store caused many people to reveal intoxicated expressions. A long queue had already begun to form. From the entrance of the opposite store, it actually ended in front of Bu Fong's store. Most of the people in the queue were men, and when they saw the red-haired woman in the store, their eyes were filled with adoration. It was unknown whether they were here to buy elixirs or to look at a woman. Today, the flow of people was clearly much higher than usual. In the surroundings, many elixir stores were also open for business. It wasn't just the red-haired woman's family. Many of the elixir stores in the vicinity were filled with people. There were even some elixir stores that had employees yelling and guiding people who wanted to buy elixirs. This area suddenly became lively. The crowd was surging, and the sound of people's voices echoed in the air. The air was filled with the fragrance of elixirs. When Nangong Ming said that this area had become the Nangong family's multi-taste fasting pills, he wasn't lying. This scene was indeed quite lively. Bu Fong's Cloud Mist restaurant was unexpectedly deserted in the midst of this bustling scene. There wasn't a single person in it, and it seemed somewhat out of place. Many people in the queue looked at Bu Fong, who was standing at the entrance of his store, and they couldn't help but sneer. Bu Fong expressionlessly swept his surroundings with his hands clasped behind his back. In the distance, Nangong Ming walked over with his Supreme Being youth. When he saw the dejected Bu Fong standing at the entrance of his store from afar, Nangong Ming's heart was filled with joy. "Oh, you actually dare to open your restaurant? This is such a bustling area, and the flow of people is so high. Yet, your restaurant doesn't even have a single customer. What's the point of opening your restaurant? Don't you feel embarrassed?" Nangong Ming sneered at Bu Fong as he walked. "That's my elixir store. Do you see it? There's so many people here. Have you ever seen so many customers in your life?" Bu Fong furrowed his brows and looked at Nangong Ming. Then, he looked in the direction that Nangong Ming was pointing at, and he saw an extremely luxuriously decorated store in the distance. It was also an elixir store. There was a long queue in front of the store, and the flow of people was extremely high. However, it was still slightly inferior to the red-haired woman's elixir store opposite the Cloud Mist restaurant. "If you don't want to eat, then get lost. I'm about to start my business. Don't block the entrance," Bu Fong said calmly. Nangong Ming froze for a moment, and anger appeared on his face. "Start your business? Do you think that your lousy restaurant still has business?" Nangong Ming sneered. He pointed at the deserted store and shook his head in disdain. Bu Fong was speechless as he looked at him. In the end, he didn't bother with Nangong Ming anymore. Green smoke curled up from his hand, and a big wok appeared in his hand. "What do you want to do?" The complexion of the Supreme Being, who was standing beside Nangong Ming, changed drastically. He was extremely nervous as he looked at Bu Fong, who was holding a black wok. He was really frightened by the black wok. "Why aren't you leaving? If you don't want to leave, then just stand there. Don't blame me for not reminding you." Bu Fong was too lazy to pay attention to those two. The black turtle constellation wok floated in the air. Bu Fong opened his mouth and spouted a mouthful of golden 10,000 bestial flames. The 10,000 bestial flames entered the bottom of the wok, and it started to emit a scorching heat. The black turtle constellation wok, which was filled with oil, started to boil. Bu Fong turned around and went into the kitchen. After a short while, he came out with a big wooden barrel. A pungent odor billowed out from the wooden barrel. Nangong Ming and the Supreme Being youth were still standing in front of Bu Fong's store. They were curious as to what Bu Fong was going to do. Was he going to start his business? Was he going to cook on the spot to attract people's attention? He was too young. This kind of trick was too low-end. The Nangong family had already used the trick of refining elixirs on the spot. In order to attract customers, the Nangong family had already tried all sorts of methods. Nangong Ming crossed his arms in front of his chest. He really wanted to see what Bufong was going to do. No matter what you do, it won't change the fact that the restaurant has no business. Nangong Ming sneered. Bufong placed the wooden barrel on the ground and pinched his nose. He exhaled a mouthful of air. Although the stinky tofu was indeed delicious, however, this pungent odor was really unpleasant to the nose. The oil in the wok was boiling, and waves of heat were surging out from it. Many people in the surroundings came over curiously. They didn't know what Bufong was going to do. From the looks of it, he wasn't going to refine elixirs. Since this was a restaurant, could it be that he was going to cook? Interesting. This person was really courageous. He actually opened a restaurant in the area where the multi-taste fasting pill was sold. Restaurants were almost extinct in the heavenly mist city. However, this person still didn't give up. It was really moving. However, no matter how moved they were, they still wouldn't foolishly enter the restaurant. Bufong used a pair of bamboo chopsticks to pick up a pitch-black piece of stinky tofu from the wooden barrel. With an indifferent expression, he placed the piece of stinky tofu into the wok. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The sound of the oil bubbling in the wok rang out. The turbid yellow oil was surging, and waves of steam rose from it. It was accompanied by an extremely pungent odor. Nangong Ming, who was standing in front of the black turtle constellation wok, was the first to feel the pungent odor of the stinky tofu. In an instant, Nangong Ming's expression changed. From disdain to shock to loathing. Finally, his face turned dark green, and his eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. When he smelled the stinky tofu's pungent odor, his whole body trembled. What the hell? Was this guy crazy? What was he cooking? Why was it so stinky? Nangong Ming felt as though his whole body had been ravaged by the pungent odor, and he was dazed. He retreated several steps, covered his nose, and his whole body trembled. He looked at Bufong, who was calmly putting the pitch-black thing into the wok, and his lips trembled. This guy was crazy. He was definitely crazy. Was he planning to destroy the entire area where the multi-taste fasting pill was sold? He was actually cooking feces in such a crowded place. How perverted was this guy's mind? Nangong Ming roared in his heart. Finally, he couldn't bear the pungent odor, and he crawled away with the Supreme Being expert. He was standing in front of the black turtle constellation wok, and he was the first to be affected by the pungent odor. Nangong Ming wanted to cry, and he felt as though he was a wife who had been ravaged 1,000 times. He was filled with grief and indignation. Why did he stand in front of the wok? Was he stupid? As the pungent odor spread out, the surrounding people couldn't help but let out cries of complaint. The faces of the people who had surrounded the area to watch the show darkened, and they quickly retreated out of the cloud mist restaurant's area. This pungent odor was simply murderous. Other elixir stores had fragrances that spread for 10 miles, but this one was stinking for 10 miles. The fragrances of so many multi-taste fasting pills were all disrupted by this pungent odor. This guy was really vicious. How could they buy the multi-taste fasting pills with peace of mind? Even if they bought them, how could they eat them? This guy actually dared to cook feces in front of so many people? He was simply a lunatic. What happened next made them even more dumbfounded. They saw the young man who was cooking feces take out several pieces of black and yellow stuff from the wok. He placed them in a bowl and sprinkled some seasonings on them. After that, he picked up a piece of the black and yellow stuff and stuffed it into his mouth. Their pores burst open and their hearts trembled. They all took a deep breath, and their eyes widened in fear. This guy didn't just cook feces, he also ate feces. Chapter 423. Gulp. The stench of the stinky tofu was blown away by the wind. It swayed and lingered in the air, and it seemed as though it was real. It was so stinky that it had no friends. The group of people blocking the entrance of the cloud mist restaurant retreated due to the stench, and their complexions darkened. However, what shocked them even more was the young man who was standing in front of the restaurant, eating excrement. How could this be eaten? Why did the person in front of them have such a heavy taste? Even the fragrance of the multi-taste fasting pill couldn't cover this stench. This guy was definitely doing it on purpose. They watched as Bufong stuffed a piece of stinky tofu into his mouth. The moment Bufong bit into it, the oil inside the tofu seeped out. The oil was shiny, and there were even some black spots on it. Everyone's faces wrinkled in an instant. Nangong Ming, who was suffocated by the stench, hid far away. He really didn't want to go near the cloud mist restaurant. When he saw Bufong chewing the source of the stench with an intoxicated expression, his face twitched. How could he swallow such a thing? He was somewhat absent-minded. Did he force the restaurant too much? Did the other party decide to cook excrement in front of the restaurant to disgust everyone? The more Nangong Ming thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. When he looked at Bufong, his gaze became even more unkind. This scheming guy. However, when he smelled the stench around him, which made him want to vomit, he didn't know what to do. What could he do? This stench was really too stinky. The people who came to buy the multi-taste fasting pill all distanced themselves in disgust. For a moment, the bustling area became quiet. After smelling this stench, who would still be in a mood to eat the multi-taste fasting pill? The blackish-yellow substance in the wok was the most disgusting thing they had ever seen. Bufong acted as though he didn't notice the disgust in the eyes of the people around him. He continued to fry the stinky tofu. He chewed this stinky tofu in his mouth. Honestly speaking, the stinky tofu's taste was really good, and Bufong couldn't stop eating it. Soon, the stench became more and more intense, and it attracted the anger of the people around him. Many elixir store owners rushed out in indignation because they had lost their customers. He stood in front of Bufong's restaurant, glaring at him. They wanted Bufong to stop this uncivilized behavior immediately. Who would cook sh*t, eat sh*t in public, especially in the area where fasting pills were sold? Many of the shop owners in the surroundings were alchemists. They had cooperated with the Nangong family to sell these fasting pills. In order to cooperate, they had to pay a price. If the profits from the fasting pills couldn't cover the price they had to pay, then they would suffer a loss. Originally, because this area had just been opened up, its prospects were quite good. They were also hoping to earn more crystals, but no one had expected there was actually a young man cooking feces. This was completely cutting off their source of income. Therefore, even if they had to endure the stench, they still had to suppress Bufong. What the f***ck is he doing? Hurry up and keep it. Stop disgusting me. How can we do business like this? How can you cook shit in front of someone else's shop? Damn it. If I lose money this time, I'll smash your stupid restaurant. f***ck, your f***king restaurant. A series of curses rang out incessantly. Bufong, who was concentrating on cooking the stinky tofu, couldn't help but frown. He stopped what he was doing and looked at the alchemist closest to him. That alchemist's curses suddenly stopped. He straightened his neck and stared coldly at Bufong. I'm cooking in my own restaurant. How is that any of your business? Bufong said indifferently. You guys sell your fasting pills. I'll sell my stinky tofu. Let's coexist peacefully. Bufong's voice was still as calm as ever. But while he was calm, the surrounding people burst into an uproar. Sell. Oh my God, is this person an idiot? He's cooking sh*t to sell it? I thought he was purely trying to disgust people. Who would be retarded enough to buy sh*t to eat? Does he really think we're all idiots? The faces of the surrounding customers, who had been tormented by the stinky tofu's stench, changed, and they started to clamor. How could there be such a weirdo in this world? Such a stinky thing. Even without tasting it, one could tell that it was disgusting. Who would buy it? Cloud Mist Restaurant? How could they make such a rubbish dish? It was no wonder that there were fewer and fewer restaurants in Heavenly Mist City. Even the last restaurant had given up on itself. The curses and complaints around him didn't affect Bufong at all. He was still calmly frying the stinky tofu. He took out a bowl, poured some seasoning on it, and placed it on the table. This is my restaurant's dish, stinky tofu. A bowl costs 20 crystals. You're welcome to try it. Bufong glanced at the people around him and said calmly, The alchemists in the elixir shops were enraged, and they all glared at Bufong with malevolent expressions. When they heard Bufong's words, they all thought that there was something wrong with their ears. Although the cost of living in Heavenly Mist City was high, not to mention how much a bowl of dish could be sold for, everyone had a common understanding that a bowl of sh tea-like dish wasn't worth 20 crystals. Did he really think that everyone's crystals were like cabbages? The voices of resistance continued. Everyone was filled with righteous indignation. There were even some people who approached the restaurant, as though they wanted to personally stop Bufong. I've said it before, this stinky tofu is the Cloud Mist restaurant's first dish. If anyone dares to take even half a step closer to me, I won't be polite, Bufong said. As soon as he finished speaking, a wisp of green smoke curled up from Bufong's hand, and a huge dragon bone kitchen knife appeared on his shoulder. When he waved the knife, it created a gust of wind, and it actually caused many people to feel pressured. Nangong Ming sneered from afar. He was delighted to see such a scene. This fellow was reckless enough to provoke the anger of the crowd, and soon he would be torn to shreds by this group of angry people. Bufong calmly glanced at them and waved his hand. Another piece of stinky tofu was thrown into the wok, and the turbid yellow oil began to boil. You said that this is a dish you're going to sell? All of a sudden, a melodious female voice rang out. The crowd parted slightly, and a red-haired woman with a voluptuous figure leisurely walked out from the elixir shop in front of them. This woman wore a veil that covered her face, and her beautiful eyes left a deep impression on Bufong. She slowly walked over, and it seemed as though she didn't care about the stench in the air. She, who had fair skin, stood in front of the store and shot a glance at the stinky tofu. Then, she looked at Bufong and furrowed her brows. The authentic Cloud Mist restaurant's secret recipe, stinky tofu, costs 20 crystals per bowl. And we're honest with you, Bufong said. Do you know that your cooking has seriously affected the elixir sales of my Nangong family in this area? Since you said that this is a dish, then I'll give it a try. If this dish is inedible, then immediately stop cooking and close the doors of your restaurant. Don't ever open for business again, or else the consequences will be unimaginable. I, Nangong Wan, will keep my word. The red-haired woman stared at Bufong and slowly said, what if it's really an inedible dish? Although Bufong didn't know Nangong Wan, this woman who had suddenly appeared was exactly what Bufong wanted. Then, you can continue with your business. I, Nangong Wan, will definitely not have any objections. Nangong Wan waved her hand. Very good. Bufong nodded his head and picked up a bowl of stinky tofu. He waved his hand, and the porcelain bowl floated toward Nangong Wan. Young Miss Nangong Wan actually agreed to eat this bowl of disgusting food. Heavens! Has young Miss Nangong Wan gone crazy? How could she agree to such a request? Don't. The perfect image of young Miss Nangong in my heart will completely collapse after eating this bowl of excrement. When the surrounding customers learned that Nangong Wan wanted to personally taste this extremely stinky dish, they all wailed in grief. They were all wailing in anguish. Some of the men were even pulling at their hair, their eyes wide open. Nangong Wan, the granddaughter of the Nangong family's great elder, was a genius who had graduated from the Alchemy Institute. She would soon pass the Pill Tower's test and become an official one-cloud alchemist. She was the goddess of many men in the Heavenly Mist City. None of them expected that Nangong Wan would step forward. Nangong Wan caught the bowl of stinky tofu that Bufong threw at her. It was really stinky. Nangong Ming couldn't help but furrow her brows when she smelled the stinky tofu's odor at such a close distance. Honestly speaking, she was somewhat disgusted. However, since she had already promised Bufong that she would eat it, she wouldn't refuse him. Nangong Wan removed her veil and revealed a peerlessly beautiful face. Her face was so beautiful that it could suffocate people. However, no one paid attention to her face at this moment. Everyone's attention was focused on her actions. They watched as she slowly picked up a piece of stinky tofu, touched it with her rosy lips, and bit it with her pearly white teeth. Everyone's heart was in their throats. Heavens! Their goddess ate excrement. This was what everyone was thinking at this moment. However, a scene that shocked them occurred in the next moment. Their goddess ate a mouthful of it, but it wasn't enough. She took another mouthful. Heavens! Their goddess was addicted to eating excrement. It was as if a bolt of lightning had struck everyone's heart. They were so shocked that they were scorched on the outside and tender on the inside. They widened their eyes and opened their mouths as they looked at Nangong Wan eating the stinky tofu faster and faster. What was happening to this world? Some people were bewildered. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth curled upwards. He squinted his eyes as he watched the beautiful woman eat the stinky tofu faster and faster. The stinky tofu was considered a marvel in the world of dishes. It had its own unique charm. After eating it once, Bu Fong believed that many people wouldn't be able to get rid of its charm. They would be subdued by the stinky tofu and sink into its delicious taste. The extremely stinky fragrance was capricious. Nangong Wan swallowed the last piece of the stinky tofu. Her lips were rosy and filled with the alluring luster of oil. She exhaled softly, and her voluptuous figure slightly trembled. She let out a sweet moan. Her beautiful eyes seemed as if they were about to drip water as she looked at Bu Fong. Her rosy lips parted as she breathed heavily. Can I have another bowl? Chapter 424. In the center of the heavenly mist city, there was an ancient-looking four-sided bronze pagoda. This pagoda seemed to be made of bronze, and its walls were engraved with all sorts of mysterious arrays. These arrays were constantly activated and emitted strange fluctuations. This pagoda was the symbol of the heavenly mist city, the Pill Pagoda. The Pill Pagoda was the symbol of every Pill city. Within the Pill Palace's sphere of influence, there were many cities. However, there were only 3 cities with Pill Pagoda that could be considered as Pill cities. The Heavenly Mist City was one of them. The 4 corners of the Pill Pagoda had a small hole in it, and dense pill energy was constantly gushing out of it. This pill energy was accompanied by a pill fragrance, filling the air and causing the entire Heavenly Mist City to be filled with a fragrant aroma. Below the Pill Pagoda, Yang Meiji raised her head and looked at the towering Pill Pagoda. Her teacher, the 3 Clouds alchemist Grandmaster Xian Bei, was currently in the Pill Pagoda. She wanted to pass the Pill Pagoda's test and become a 1 Cloud alchemist. Once she became a 1 Cloud alchemist, her status in the Heavenly Mist City would rise, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call her a person above others. In the Pill City, alchemists were the true protagonists. Yang Meiji took a deep breath, and she suddenly became nervous. She had wasted too much time because of the Cloud Mist restaurant, and she didn't know whether she could pass the test or not. How was the Cloud Mist restaurant doing now? The Nangong family's multi-taste fasting pill seemed to be opening near the restaurant. Would the restaurant become a laughingstock in the eyes of everyone because of this? Yang Meiji couldn't help but worry about the restaurant situation. Creak, a heavy and ancient sound resounded, and the bronze gate of the Pill Pagoda slowly opened. Dense pill energy spread out from the Pill Pagoda, and Yang Meiji's body trembled. Then, she mustered up her courage and stepped into the Pill Pagoda to take the 1 Cloud alchemist test. Nangong was actually a slightly arrogant person. When she walked out of the elixir store and said that she wanted to eat the dish, she was already regretting her decision. It wasn't because of anything else, but because the smell was too stinky. She spoke without thinking, and she spoke too quickly. She accidentally threw herself into a pit. Moreover, she was a person with a strong sense of pride, and since she had already said it, she wouldn't take it back. Therefore, she could only hold her breath and try this stinky dish. In fact, her heart rejected it. She was not stupid. Eating this kind of thing would really damage her image as a goddess. No woman would not care about their image. When he received the bowl of stinky stuff, he felt a chill run down his spine. Nangong Wan really wanted to throw the bowl at the calm young man's face when she saw the yellow thing inside. However, she endured it. Words that had been spoken were like water that had been spilled. It cannot be taken back. So she chose to eat. At most, if it was really disgusting, he could go back and use the body-cleansing pill to clean up the impurities all over his body. When she took a bite of the thing called stinky tofu, Nangong Wan felt somewhat doubtful. That was because the disgust he had imagined didn't appear. Instead, his mouth was filled with a rich fragrance. This was simply unbelievable. It smelled so bad, so why did it taste so good? Could it be that this chef stuffed something fragrant into the tofu? A trace of astonishment appeared on Nangong Wan's face. She glanced at Bufong and took another bite. She took another bite, and the taste was different once again. The taste of the tofu in her mouth was as if something was massaging her oral muscles. Moreover, as the stinky tofu entered her stomach, Nangong Wan felt as if all the pores in her body were slightly opened. Spirit energy surged out from the stinky tofu and poured into her body. It was so comfortable that she couldn't help but moan. She took one bite after another, unable to stop. She had unexpectedly fallen in love with this stinky delicacy. It was truly a delicacy. She had never experienced the feeling of eating delicacies. This was a completely different experience from eating fasting pills. She was intoxicated by this feeling. She finished the bowl of stinky tofu. Give me another bowl. When Nangong Wan said these words, she was somewhat embarrassed. Her pretty face became slightly flushed. She was already beautiful, and when she appeared in such a manner, she became even more alluring. The surrounding men all widened their eyes, and their nostrils flared, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Oh my God! Their goddess actually wasn't satisfied after eating one bowl. Did she get addicted to it? However, the rational people looked at the stinky tofu in doubt. Could it be that this dish was truly edible? No, it was definitely edible. They trusted Nangong Wan, and since their goddess ate it so happily, it was truly edible. For a moment, all sorts of feelings welled up in the hearts of the crowd, and they no longer looked at the stinky tofu with disgust. That was a dish that their goddess had eaten before. Bufong turned a blind eye to Nangong Wan's ladle-like attitude. The corners of his mouth curled up, and he put away the black turtle constellation walk. He carried the bucket and returned to the store. If you want to eat a second bowl, then come to my store. As Nangong Wan looked at Bufong's slender and skinny back, she held the porcelain bowl and bit her plump red lips. She savored the delicious taste in her mouth, and after glancing at Bufong's back, she actually stepped into the restaurant. At this moment, an uproar broke out among the crowd. Their goddess actually stepped into the Cloud Mist restaurant, a restaurant that had already declined. It was truly an honor for this restaurant. The surrounding people were extremely surprised, and they started whispering to each other. However, they didn't hesitate for long. Several men braced themselves and walked out of the crowd, bearing the stench, and stepped into the restaurant. The others had also surrounded the restaurant, making it so that not even a drop of water could pass through. Nangong Wan entered the restaurant. The outside was filled with an overwhelming stench, but there wasn't even the slightest bit of stench within the restaurant. This caused her beautiful eyes to suddenly light up. The interior of the store was extremely clean, and there was even a fragrance floating in the air. With a sweep of her gaze, she found the source of the fragrance. There was actually a 5 stripes path understanding tree planted in the corner of the wall. It was a path understanding tree, which could attain 5 stripes, and it was a precious medicinal ingredient. This store actually used it as a potted plant. She found a seat and sat down. After putting down the porcelain bowl, she extended a finger and wiped the surface of the table. The table was spotless. Nangong Wan's astonishment became even more intense. This Cloud Mist restaurant seemed to be somewhat different from the rumors. What do you want to eat? Is it still stinky tofu? After placing the wooden bucket in the kitchen, Bufong walked out and asked Nangong Wan, who was sitting elegantly at the side. Nangong Wan's beautiful eyes fell on Bufong. As she looked at this calm youth, a trace of astonishment flashed in her eyes. This youth's gaze was really calm when he looked at her. Nangong Wan was already used to men's gazes of adoration, and this kind of indifference made her a little excited. Apart from stinky tofu, are there any other dishes? Nangong Wan blinked her beautiful eyes and asked. Yes, there is. It's on the menu behind you, Bufong said expressionlessly. Nangong Wan was taken aback. She turned her head around and saw that there were indeed 4 dishes on the menu. The stinky tofu was impressively one of them. However, the stinky tofu wasn't the most expensive dish. Nangongwan was startled. Her plump red lips parted, and she covered her mouth with her hand. Her face was filled with disbelief and shock. Coming to this restaurant today gave her a huge shock. 10,000 crystals? You're selling a dish for 10,000 crystals? Are you crazy? An 8th grade elixir is only selling for 10,000 crystals. Nangongwan cried out in alarm. As a genius who was about to become a one-cloud alchemist, Nangongwan was very clear about the difficulty of refining an 8th grade elixir. The price of a dish was equivalent to that of an 8th grade elixir. Was the owner of this restaurant crazy? 20 crystals for a bowl of stinky tofu was still acceptable. Even though it was expensive, it wasn't excessively expensive. But this Buddha jumps over the wall soup for 10,000 crystals. It was simply insane. Honest price, fair trade. Bufang shot a glance at Nangongwan. It was as though he was looking at a country bumpkin who had never seen the world. When he was still in the Light Wind Empire, a bowl of Buddha jumps over the wall soup was sold for 10,000 crystals. What was wrong with selling it for 10,000 crystals here? Bufang even thought that it was too cheap. What a fair trade. Nangongwan rolled her eyes at Bufang. Her slender fingers tapped on the table. And in the end, she still ordered a bowl of stinky tofu. Bufang expressionlessly looked at her until she felt a chill run down her spine. After thinking for a long time, this woman still ordered stinky tofu. She was really stingy. Bufang curled his lips into a smile. Please wait a moment. After speaking, Bufang turned around and entered the kitchen. Several men carefully entered the store and sat at a table in the distance. They admired Nangongwan's graceful figure from afar. For them, Nangongwan's dishes were much more delicious than those in the restaurant. She was a feast for the eyes. Nangongwan seemed to be used to these gazes. She pulled back her black hair, which was hanging down from her forehead, and supported her fair chin with her hands. She calmly waited. After a while, a familiar stench wafted out of the kitchen. The few men's faces immediately darkened. It was really stinky. However, Nangongwan's eyes lit up. After tasting the stinky tofu's delicious taste, she unknowingly got used to the stench. She didn't feel disgusted anymore. This change in her attitude shocked Nangongwan. After a while, Bufang walked out of the kitchen with a porcelain bowl in his hands. Your stinky tofu. Please enjoy. Nangongwan stuck out her tongue and licked her lips. She didn't hesitate to dig in. The stinky tofu's delicious taste intoxicated her. The men in the distance went crazy because of Nangongwan's careless action. It was too tempting. They didn't expect that she was such a goddess. Bufang furrowed his brows and turned his head to look at the wretched men sitting in the distance. What do you want to eat? If you don't want to eat, then get lost. Those men were stunned. Then they straightened their necks and said, give us a bowl of the goddess stinky tofu as well. Oh, wait for it. Bufang looked at those men as if they were idiots. He turned around and entered the kitchen. Outside the store, a group of people gathered. They curiously looked inside. A stench wafted out of the store. Then they saw a scene that left them dumbfounded. The men looked as if they had starved to death as they ate the stinky tofu on the porcelain plates, their mouths dripping with oil. Chapter 425. Even if he disliked her, there was no need for him to make such a rule for her. It would have been better if Bufang had remained silent. Once he spoke, those people widened their eyes and became anxious. There were so many people, but they all fell down one after another. The furious people and the calm Bufang formed a sharp contrast. You want us to leave just because you said so? Who the hell do you think you are? Bufang grabbed the black turtle constellation walk and slowly raised it toward those people. What do you mean by the opening hours are over? We are already giving you face by coming here to eat. Are you still pretending? A large group of people squeezed into the store, causing it to become somewhat noisy. Nangongwan sensed something and turned her head to look at Bufang, who was carrying a large plate of her food. She looked at Bufang with an odd expression on her face. Owner, give me a serving of stinky tofu. I want to taste the taste of a dish that even my goddess can't stop eating. Yes, young miss. He glanced at those people and calmly said, "Don't block the store. I already said that the opening hours are over, and we'll be closing soon. You should all disperse. I'm sorry, but today's opening hours are over. If you want to eat, come back early tomorrow." Nangong was taken aback. She looked at Bu Fong with an embarrassed expression. Did this guy dislike her for eating too much? Her pupils constricted. In the elixir store, Nangong was soaking in a huge barrel made of wood. A unique medicinal fragrance was wafting out of the barrel. Then, the woman went into her elixir store and slammed the door shut with a loud bang. Nangong was somewhat astonished, and she was somewhat incredulous. Besides the stinky tofu, Bu Fong also wanted to continue researching some new dishes. Bu Fong calmly said, "Goddess, don't you want to vomit? What did you say? Brat, did you do that on purpose?" Those customers were just curious and wanted to eat something new. It smelled like excrement, so it was impossible for them to defeat the Nangong family's multi-taste fasting pill. The group of people left with different thoughts. However, since the store's rules were about to be implemented, Bu Fong had no choice but to reject Nangong's request for another bowl of stinky tofu. A bowl of food actually had the effect of a pill. How could she remain calm? Business as usual tomorrow? You King beat up yours truly, and you still want to open for business? In the face of these questions, Nangong gently smiled and tapped her red lips with her fair and slender finger. This young man seemed to be somewhat different from the rest. "We'll be open as usual tomorrow. If you want to eat stinky tofu, come earlier tomorrow. Business hours are over." It was as if I had heard a joke. As the medicinal liquid rose, steam rose into the air. Nangong's body curled up, and a white cloth wrapped around her body, covering her voluptuous body. However, they had yet to speak. The people who were pursuing Nangong were the descendants of the Heavenly Mist City's aristocratic families. They were all arrogant people, so how could they endure the humiliation from Bu Fong? Nangong stood in the room and looked through the window at the brightly lit Cloud Mist restaurant. He held a green pill between his fingers and swallowed it, then smiled. Bu Fong didn't care about it. After the crowd was stunned for a moment, they burst into an uproar and started chattering nonstop. The taste, you can all guess. Do you think you can rely on Nangong to gain a foothold in the area where the multi-taste fasting pill is sold? Bu Fong asked the system inwardly. The system's voice caused Bu Fong to be slightly dazed. Perhaps the situation in Heavenly Mist City would change because of this small restaurant. Bu Fong curled up the corners of his mouth, and a helpless expression appeared on his face. The more he spoke, the angrier he became. As the black wok was being tossed, it became bigger and bigger. The medicinal liquid in the barrel was bubbling unceasingly. Nangong's fingers curled around her fiery red hair as she squinted her eyes. Bu Fong calmly looked at the noisy crowd. His gaze was extremely calm. "Give me a portion as well." The goddess's last smile was to encourage me to come and taste her dish. These people, I was talking to them nicely, but why didn't they listen? Bu Fong said coldly. Nangong, who was standing near the entrance, looked at Nangong, who seemed to be skipping out of the restaurant. Bu Fong's voice wasn't loud, but it was very clear. Was he trying to loosen the reins only to grasp them better? "Match your head." Nangong rolled her eyes at Bu Fong. Only an idiot would order a Buddha jumps over the wall soup that cost 10,000 crystals. She took out a crystal and gave it to Bu Fong. Nangong rejoiced inwardly. Since he had offended this group of people, the restaurant wouldn't be able to open for business the next day. Nangong glanced at the many bowls beside her, and she couldn't help but pout. She had unknowingly eaten so much. She was obviously a virtuous lady. Was this the effect of delicious food? Someone cried out in alarm. They wanted to block the black wok, but they couldn't block the enormous force coming from the Black Turtle Constellation wok. When Xiaobai fought with the Grand Baron's sex genius, Liang Kai, his body was pierced by the Black Turtle Constellation wok, and he was taken back by the system to be repaired. The system notified him that he would have to wait until Bu Fong finished dealing with the branch. Now, after he sold his first bowl of stinky tofu, Xiaobai finally started to repair his body. When Nangong Wan walked out of the restaurant, the crowd outside the restaurant went into an uproar and opened up a path for her. Since the goddess has eaten it, how can I not? Give me 10 portions. I want to prove that I am the true love of the goddess. She was in a good mood, and she was intoxicated by the lazy and leisurely feeling she had after eating her fill. Bufang pulled out a chair and sat on it. He suddenly hoped that Xiao Bai would finish repairing his body soon. He needed Xiao Bai, the crazy clothes-stripping demon, to deal with these stubborn fellows. After she took a few steps, she froze. System, how long will it take for Xiao Bai to finish repairing his body? Indeed, no one expected that Bufang would make such a move. Opening a restaurant in Heavenly Mist City was already idiotic enough, and he still rejected so many customers. Wasn't he even more idiotic? If he just stripped them and threw them out, they would all learn their lesson. Thus, he continued to busy himself. Nangongwan muttered to herself. She stepped out of the wooden barrel, and her jade-like feet stepped on the ground. Her slender and fair legs attracted everyone's attention. When Bufang closed the door, he felt somewhat helpless. After they calmed down a little, they slowly stood up from their seats. The chattering people in the store were all stunned. Bufang nodded his head. He would probably be able to see Xiao by the next day. After returning to the kitchen, Bufang placed the wooden barrel into the cupboard so that the stench would disperse. Although the stinky tofu's taste was pretty good, the stench wasn't something an ordinary person could endure. This stench is so stinky. How could young Miss Nangong dare to swallow it? Nangong Ming, who was standing at the entrance, sneered as he looked at the angry customers in the restaurant. Bufang took a deep breath. He was looking forward to Xiao Bai's return. Then, she elegantly stood up and walked out of the store while swaying her graceful figure. The true energy in my body is boiling uncontrollably, and the total amount of my true energy is increasing. Is it because of the stinky tofu? Can dishes also increase the total amount of true energy? Nangongwan curled her red lips into a smile. You're too noisy. Scram. Bufang's calm voice drifted out from the crack in the door, causing the complexions of the people who were lying on the ground to become unsightly. Cries of agony could be heard across the place. The people who were closest to Bufang were infuriated. Was he going to attack them? Some of them were so anxious that their eyes turned red. They crawled up from the ground and glared at the store. Aunt Moo, help me investigate the identity of that restaurant's owner. When did such a person appear in the Heavenly Mist City? Interesting. Today, this young master will really eat a bowl of stinky tofu. Then, a trace of delight appeared in the depths of his eyes. Was it time to restore Xiao Bai? That woman actually didn't make things difficult for the Cloud Mist restaurant. 12 hours? Someone sneered. Green smoke curled around his hand, and the black turtle constellation Wok appeared in his hand. Do you know who I am? I'm the son of the husband of the Heavenly Mist City Lord's eldest uncle, second aunt's third aunt. Within the store, Bufang couldn't help but curl up the corners of his mouth after he received the crystals from the unwilling men. The voice in the black robe respectfully replied. Then, its figure disappeared like a bubble. It seemed like Nangong Wan had aroused the curiosity of the surrounding people. Many people walked into the store and wanted to order a bowl of stinky tofu to try. Bufang put away the black turtle constellation Wok and slowly walked to the door. He ignored the gazes of those people and closed the bronze door with a bang. F***CK. If it wasn't for the goddess, who would come here to eat something that tastes like SH**T. You even told us that the opening hours are over? F***CK. What's this? A pleasant voice lingered around. Bufang expressionlessly met Nangong Wan's gaze. He curled up the corners of his mouth and calmly said, I'm sorry, but from today onward, each person can only order one bowl of the store's dishes. As a member of the Nangong family, Nangong Ming clearly knew how terrifying Nangong Wan was. This outrageously beautiful woman had a terrifying talent for alchemy. Young Miss Nangong, how does that dish taste? Cloud Mist Restaurant? The last restaurant in the Heavenly Mist City? The surrounding people started to discuss among themselves, and they couldn't help but ask all sorts of questions. Who is the owner of this restaurant? Is he also an alchemist? Why do I feel that his dish has the shadow of an alchemy technique? Nan Gongwan expressionlessly looked at the people who entered the store. This group of people was directly pushed out of the store. However, this girl really ate a lot. With a snap of his fingers, a black-robed figure appeared and respectfully stood near Nan Gongwan. Bu Fong looked at Nan Gongwan, who was holding a porcelain bowl and looking at him with an expectant gaze. It seemed like she wanted to order another bowl, and the solemn voice of the system resounded in his mind. This kind of happiness couldn't be produced by eating the multi-taste fasting pill. Congratulations to the host for completing the branch. The restoration of Shao Bai has begun, and the new rules of the branch will be implemented. The Buddha jumps over the wall soup and the stinky tofu go well together. You can't order the stinky tofu anymore, but you can still order other dishes, Bu Fong earnestly said as he looked at Nan Gongwan, who seemed somewhat annoyed. Shao Bai is upgrading its intelligence, and its equipment is being replaced. It will take 12 hours, the system earnestly said. They discovered that the black walk was suddenly thrown toward them by the youth. The new rules of the store were also being implemented. This guy is a moron. I've never seen such a death-seeking person. Chapter 4:26. Even the top-notch elixir stores in the Heavenly Mist City didn't dare to do such a thing. A small restaurant actually didn't give them any face. The Cloud Mist restaurant, through the 10 miles of stinky tofu, had finally become famous. Although the stinky tofu was smelly, everyone who had eaten it knew that it tasted really good. In the next instant, the two supreme beings screamed in fright. They realized that a demonic hand was coming to grab them. However, shortly after, Bu Fong walked out of the kitchen. Bu Fong looked at them and nodded calmly. He said, "Okay, wait for a while." Their eyes widened and became bloodshot. This fellow really wanted to cut off their source of income. The stench had been lingering in the air for half a day, and the customers were all gone. How were they going to earn money? When they saw the appearance of the figure in front of them, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. Two crisp sounds rang out. A gust of wind blew past, blowing the stench of the stinky tofu further away. More people's faces darkened. Bu Fong walked out with a wooden bucket. Under the dumbfounded gazes of the other men, he placed the bucket at the entrance. Bu Fong's movements paused. Just as he was about to retaliate, his brows twitched and the corners of his mouth curled up. All of a sudden, the two supreme beings felt a chill run down their spines. Shao Bai's purple eyes twinkled as he raised his fan-like hand. The air was filled with true energy. Soon, the two of them came to Bu Fong's side. A black wok appeared. They poured oil into it, and a golden flame entered the bottom of the wok, burning fiercely. Bu Fong's eyes lit up. The next morning, as the door opened, a dazzling light appeared in front of him. The light completely filled his eyes, and he felt a little uncomfortable. Then, Bu Fong turned around and went into the kitchen. He was probably going to cook the stinky tofu. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth curled up. He was in a good mood. As soon as he finished speaking, the two supreme beings behind him took a step forward. Their auras were imposing. However, they didn't choose to take it out. Instead, they ate it in the restaurant and enjoyed it happily. Stinky tofu is really delicious, they thought happily in their hearts. The few men stepped into the store as if they were very familiar with each other. After finding a place to sit down, they impatiently said to Bu Fong, "Your stinky tofu." Friendly reminder, stinky tofu can be taken out. Blarg. Bu Fong's expression was indifferent. He didn't care about the resentful gazes that were directed at him from outside. He continued to fry the stinky tofu. With a thud, oil splattered everywhere. As if they had their own background music, this group of people walked over from afar with an overbearing aura. They were the disciples of the Heavenly Mist City's families that had been thrown out of the store by Bu Fong's wok. The two supreme martial artists were furious. This made Bu Fong rather excited. "Kid, I heard that you're very arrogant. Why isn't it time for business hours today? Since you're not here yet, I'll help you get there earlier." They had never eaten stinky tofu before, so there was no way they could endure the stench. This bastard, isn't he afraid of being beaten to death? Releasing poison so early in the morning. Today, they came to take revenge for yesterday's walk. This kind of feeling surprised them. The multi-taste fasting pill didn't give them such a feeling of anticipation. What a familiar voice. Fong Fong's little store Xiao Bai had really returned. Bu Fong let go of the chopsticks in his hand, and the piece of stinky tofu instantly fell into the wok. Oil splattered everywhere, and the stench instantly filled the air. The stinky tofu flew toward the two supreme martial artists. Those people were taken aback for a moment. Then, mischievous smiles appeared in their eyes. Honorable was really too evil. When the doors opened, the clamor outside was like a sluice gate that had been opened. Rip! Rip! Is this owner trying to stir up trouble? How are people going to buy the multi-taste fasting pill with him like this? After the upgrade, Xiao Bai should be much stronger than before. With a long shout, the two supreme martial artists instantly took action. They wanted to smash the puppet that was giving them such a huge pressure. This group of people were used to acting like tyrants in heavenly Mist City. Bu Fong's disregard for them made their hearts burn with rage. This fellow was actually so calm when facing their attacks. Was he looking down on them? Why did an 8th grade war god have to look down on them? Troublemakers will be stripped as an example to others. Instantly, more than 10 supreme beings stood out. The two supreme beings who took the lead instantly released their true energy and caused the air to surge. They strode toward Bu Fong. An ice-cold voice rang out. In the direction of the pitch-black kitchen, 2 rays of purple light suddenly lit up. Bu Fong was awakened by the clamor outside the window. In heavenly Mist City, this was the first time they saw someone daring to use a wok to smash them out of their store. Troublemakers? Today we are here to tear down your store. Everyone attack. Break this kid's limbs for me. Damn it. He dares to offend us. He doesn't know the meaning of death. How infuriating. Bu Fong placed the fried stinky tofu into a porcelain bowl and sprinkled some seasoning on it. Bu Fong then carried it to the side of those men. Oh my god, how could it be so stinky? Are you guys trying to cause trouble? Bu Fong calmly asked as he swept his gaze over the two supreme beings. After eating the stinky tofu the day before, these men couldn't forget its taste. Their minds were filled with stinky tofu. It was much more delicious than the multi-taste fasting elixir. Bu Fong's cultivation was merely at the 8th grade war god level. They didn't fear him at all. It seemed as though a huge figure was slowly walking out of the kitchen. Bu Fong said as he placed a bowl of stinky tofu in front of them. Bu Fong picked up a piece of pitch-black stinky tofu from a wok and threw it into the wok. Bu Fong blinked his eyes as he looked at the group of people surrounding the store. He held a piece of pitch-black stinky tofu in his hand. Xiao Bai had finished repairing his body. Gulp, gulp. Xiao Bai has finished repairing his body. Teleportation will now begin. The faces of the supreme beings darkened, and they felt nauseous. It was just as their young master had said. This guy was really cooking feces. The stench wafted out again, drifting toward the bustling elixir stores. Although they were supreme being guards, they were still supreme beings. Since that was the case, was there any need for this restaurant to exist? The owners of the surrounding elixir stores almost went crazy. Even that stench made them feel nostalgic. They couldn't wait to get out of bed and have a bowl of it. What's going on? What's inside? The two supreme beings swallowed a mouthful of saliva. They were bewildered. This caused the crowd to be somewhat dumbfounded. The crowd of indignant people surrounding the store suddenly broke into an uproar and retreated in a large circle. Bu Fong propped up his chin as he looked at the bustling scene below. The corners of his mouth curled upwards. Everyone nodded. The disciples of these families were surrounded by guards. The cultivation of these guards had reached the supreme being level. Each of them followed the disciples of these families coldly, and their auras surged. That purple light was cold, and it emitted an aura that made the hearts of the two supreme beings tremble. How could there be such a shameless person in this world? A kitchen knife spun in Bu Fong's hand. The knife light flickered and finally hung on the knife rack. What the F***CK? The owner of this restaurant came out to cook feces again. Can't you give the supreme beings some basic respect? Why don't you struggle a little? Actually, Bufong was a little expectant at this moment. After one night, Xiao Bai should have finished repairing, and a brand new Xiao Bai would appear in this branch. The customers in the queue instantly exploded. The stench wafted over with the wind, lingering in spirals and lingering at the tip of everyone's nose. It made the faces of the customers in the queue darken. Bufong thought in his heart. Hence, he was even more expectant. However, the solemn voice of the system rang out in Bufong's mind, completely out of tune with the clamor. Really? Cooking such a smelly thing so early in the morning? What are they doing? Don't do this. Stop. Without another word, he raised his fist and smashed it toward Bufong with surging true energy. He went into the kitchen and began to practice his cooking skills. All of a sudden, an uproar resounded outside the crowd. It was because the figure in front of them was actually a puppet made of iron. A youth in luxurious clothes sneered as he looked at Bufong and said coldly, "Ah, troublemaker, strip as an example to others." A moment later, the two supreme beings and the supreme beings felt a gust of wind surging in front of them. A huge figure suddenly appeared in front of them. They subconsciously looked toward the direction of the restaurant's kitchen because they felt an ice-cold, killing intent coming from there. "Since you want to die, then die," a supreme being said coldly. Buzz, his movements slowed down again, and he continued to put the stinky tofu into the wok. "Honorbu, good morning. Give us a serving of stinky tofu." A wave of orderly footsteps rang out. Among the crowd that had retreated, a large group of people slowly walked over. Sitting up on the bed, Bufong stretched his body and yawned. He walked to the window, leaned against it, and looked outside. After washing the dishes, Bufong went downstairs. With every step he took, their hearts jumped. Outside the store, there were already several people queuing up. They were the men from yesterday. Waves of air rolled, blowing Bufong's hair, causing it to flutter unceasingly. The two supreme beings made a move at the same time, trying to suppress Bufong. Their eyes revealed a fierce glint, and they were full of mockery. All of them furrowed their brows, and they were extremely resentful. Bufong gently exhaled, walked to the door, and slowly pushed it open. The elixir store below was in full swing, and all kinds of people flowed in and out of the store. The two supreme beings were directly slapped to the ground. It was incomparably easy. The wok began to boil. That ice-cold metallic figure emitted a luster that caused people's hearts to go numb. That sharp and distinct armor exuded a heavy aura. The mysterious runes on the armor caused their pupils to shrink. Those purple eyes were like rays of light from the underworld, causing the hearts of the two supreme beings to involuntarily tremble. Chapter 427. Rip, rip, two clear and melodious sounds of clothes tearing resounded in everyone's ears. The eyes of the two supreme being guards, who wanted to teach Bufong a lesson, were filled with terror. It wasn't because of anything else but the sudden appearance of the puppet. What the hell was that? Bang, bang, two figures were thrown out of the cloud mist restaurant. Their figures streaked across the sky in a graceful arc before coming into intimate contact with the ground. Everyone was dumbfounded and didn't know what had happened. It was especially so for the descendant who ordered the two supreme being guards to attack the store. He was dumbfounded and had a horrified expression on his face. The two figures that were sent flying out of the restaurant landed right in front of him. The two figures were completely naked, causing the clan's descendant to be unable to wrap his head around what was going on. He didn't understand why it was his guards were thrown out. The two supreme being guards' complexions darkened. They didn't expect that dignified supreme being experts like them would be stripped naked and thrown out by someone. This was even more unacceptable than killing them. The group of people surrounding them blinked their bright eyes and stared at the two naked bodies that were crawling up from the ground. All of them let out undulating sneers. The sound of laughter resounded, and it was like a series of slaps landing on the face of that clan's descendant. It was so F***ing painful. The face of the descendant became as red as a monkey's butt. His eyes were wide open, and he was so angry that his hair was about to stand up. The Supreme Being wasn't any better. The two of them were extremely embarrassed. They quickly took out clothes from their spatial spirit tool and put them on. Only then did they feel much better about their naked butts. TSK, TSK. I say, third young master Lin, your Lin family's guards aren't good enough. They were actually stripped naked and thrown out. Does your face hurt? A playful laughter rang out. It was a young man dressed in a coquettish, embroidered robe. He sneered at the descendant. The descendant, who was addressed as third young master Lin, became even more furious. He coldly glanced at the descendant and snorted inwardly. Are you two idiots? You can't even deal with an 8th grade war god? What's the use of raising you? Third young master Lin cursed angrily as he looked at the two Supreme Being guards in disheveled clothes. The two Supreme Beings couldn't help but frown. Although their faces were flushed red, they were mostly displeased. After all, they were Supreme Beings. Even though they were the guards of the Lin family, they still had the dignity of a Supreme Being. Third young master Lin, I think it's better for your guards to stand down. The young man smiled disdainfully. At the same time, he instructed his guards, intending to let his subordinates take action. If his men could kill Bufang, it would be a great blow to third young master Lin's morale. He was the young master of Heavenly Mist City's Zhang family, and his status in Heavenly Mist City wasn't any lower than third young master Lin's. Both of them were Nangong Wan's pursuers. Yesterday, they were thrown out of the restaurant by Bufang's wok, and they naturally felt that they had lost a great deal of face. Thus, today, they came with their guards to get back at Bufang. Boom! The ground trembled. Then, a huge figure appeared in front of the restaurant's entrance. Bufang placed the stinky tofu in his hand into the wok of oil. He immediately sized up Xiao Bai in astonishment. This was the upgraded and repaired Xiao Bai. It looked even more majestic. Different from the previous Xiao Bai, the repaired Xiao Bai looked more like a warrior who had donned a suit of armor. The armor on his body was angular and emitted an ice-cold light. Xiao Bai still had the metal wings folded on his back, which gave people an oppressive feeling. The surface of the armor was filled with mysterious runes. Those runes were densely packed on the armor, causing people to feel a little dizzy just by looking at them. However, what made Bufang happy was that Xiao Bai's plump belly was not covered by the armor. It was still white and plump. Bufang reached out his hand and patted it. It felt the same as before. It seemed like Xiao Bai was still able to recycle the trash ingredients in the restaurant. All in all, after Xiao Bai was upgraded and repaired, he became even more handsome. Bufang nodded his head in satisfaction. System, how is Xiao Bai's fighting capacity now? His limit should have been increased, right? Bufang asked the system curiously. Xiao Bai's fighting capacity was already strong. After the repair, it should be even stronger. After Xiao Bai's new upgrade, he used the core iron from the extreme black iron mine to reconstruct his body. He also wore a specially made battle armor full of offensive arrays. His fighting capacity has been increased. Now, Xiao Bai's fighting capacity is equivalent to a divine physique echelon expert who has broken through 5 Supreme Being shackles. Xiao Bai's fighting capacity is 2 levels higher than the host's cultivation. Moreover, he has an explosive mode, which allows him to burst forth with stronger fighting capacity. However, after using the explosive mode, Xiao Bai needs 2 days to recover. The system solemnly and earnestly explained the newly upgraded fighting capacity of Xiao Bai to Bufang. Bufang was stupefied as he listened. Even though he didn't really understand, he still felt that it was really awesome. Patting Xiao Bai's plump belly, Bufang curled up the corners of his mouth. Xiao Bai, the boss thinks highly of you. A purple light flickered in Xiao Bai's eyes. He raised his fan-like palm and rubbed his head. I was wondering how an 8th grade war god like you could strip 2 Supreme Beings and throw them out. So, there's a puppet in the store. Is this puppet the source of your confidence? The Zhang family's young master swayed his body coquettishly. He looked at the tall and sturdy Xiao Bai beside Bufang, narrowed his eyes, and sneered. Beside him, The two Supreme Being experts also had their true energy swirling around their bodies as they stared at Whitey coldly. As for the two Supreme Being experts who were stripped naked, they looked at Xiao Bai with fear. No one knew better than them how terrifying this puppet was. In front of that puppet, the two of them couldn't even put up a fight. It felt as though they were facing a divine physique echelon expert. In the elixir store opposite the Cloud Mist restaurant, Nangong Wan, who was wearing a veil, leaned against the door and watched the battle in the store with interest. A trace of astonishment flashed in the depths of her eyes. Originally, she thought that this restaurant didn't have any background. Now, it seemed like she had made her conclusion too early. A chef of unknown origin and a puppet that came out of nowhere. Interesting. This farce had already attracted many people. Everyone was curiously looking at this restaurant. They naturally recognized the Zhang family's young master and the Lin family's third young master. In the heavenly mist city, everyone knew the people from these two great families. However, they didn't expect that this restaurant would dare to provoke such existences. It seemed like this restaurant's owner was going to suffer calamity. There was no one in the heavenly mist city who didn't know how powerful these two families were. After all, the Zhang family and the Lin family were great families that could be mentioned in the same breath as the Nangong family. Bang! The two Zhang family's supreme beings aura surged. They glared angrily at Bu Fong and dashed forward. They wanted to capture Bu Fong in one move. One of the supreme being experts moved to block Xiao Bai while the other attacked Bu Fong. They had a clear division of labor, and their goal was clear. The Zhang family's young master was very satisfied. As expected of the Zhang family's supreme being guards, they had some skills. He glanced at the Lin family's third young master, who had an ugly expression on his face. Looking at the Lin family, they actually raised two pieces of trash. Xiao Bai's head turned slightly, and his purple eyes flickered. Troublemakers will be stripped as an example to others. It was still the same unrestrained sentence. When the two Lin family supreme beings heard it, their hearts trembled. The Zhang family's supreme being didn't care. He roared angrily, and the true energy in his body revolved to the fullest, as if it was about to burn. His palms seemed to be able to smash a mountain as it smashed toward Xiao Bai. The other supreme being directly dashed toward Bu Fong, wanting to capture Bu Fong. As long as they could take care of Bu Fong, they would be able to subdue the puppet. Thus, Bu Fong was their target. However, when his eyes met Bu Fong's, the supreme being's heart skipped a beat. It was because Bu Fong's eyes were looking at him as if he was looking at an idiot. Bang! A sudden tremor rang out behind him. The supreme being was taken aback, and he turned his head to look behind him. He saw a scene that made his whole body shiver. That puppet, that metal puppet, facing his companion's attack, actually only used a punch. The sound of bones breaking rang out. The Zhang family's supreme being, who had smashed his palm toward Xiao Bai, was smashed to the ground by Xiao Bai's punch, and one of his arms directly exploded. Damn it! How can this puppet be so strong? The supreme being who was rushing toward Bu Fong roared in his heart. He turned his head, and his face was ferocious as he looked at Bu Fong. Catch you. Once I catch you, this puppet will be useless. Come over here. Rumble. The true energy stirred up a fierce wind, and the Supreme Being's cultivation was not weak. He should be in the middle stage of the Supreme Being realm. His figure was like lightning, and he rushed toward Bu Fong with his eyes wide open. Bu Fong calmly looked at the Supreme Being. The violent wind blew his hair, and it broke free from the velvet rope, fluttering in all directions. Plop! He loosened his chopsticks, and a piece of stinky tofu fell into the wok of oil. Waves of heat rose, and it was accompanied by a wafting stench. In the next moment, just as the Supreme Being was about to catch Bu Fong, a huge palm the size of a cattail leaf suddenly appeared in front of him, and it grabbed his head. The huge force made the Supreme Being feel as if his head was about to explode. An angry roar rang out, and it seemed as if he had used a move that put his life on the line. The Supreme Being actually broke free from Xiao Bai's grasp, and he landed in the distance, gasping for breath. He raised his head, looking at Xiao Bai in fear. However, before he could see clearly, A palm that was like a cattail leaf fan slapped him. The Supreme Being was directly slapped, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He was sent flying far away, and he fell to the ground. Xiao Bai took heavy steps, and he walked toward the two people. He grabbed them, tore them apart, and threw them away. Their clothes fluttered, and the two Zhang family Supreme Beings were thrown out like dead dogs. Bang! Bang! The two Supreme Beings fell at the feet of the Zhang family's young master. The latter raised his head with a dumbfounded expression, and his face was filled with disbelief. What the hell? Why was the ending a little different from what he had imagined? In the next moment, his body suddenly stiffened. He looked at Xiao Bai, and he discovered that the metal puppet's purple eyes had actually locked onto his body. Troublemaker, troublemaker, your sister. This puppet, what the hell does it want to do? I'm the Zhang family's young master. The young man's face was filled with fear as he retreated. He instantly roared at the group of Supreme Being experts beside him. What are you looking at? Hurry up and attack. Stop this beast for me. Chapter 428. In front of the store, Xiao Bai slowly walked forward. The armor on his body was simple and heavy, and it was full of mysterious patterns. Its purple eyes were deep and mysterious, and as they flickered, it made people's hair stand on end. The Zhang family's young master roared in fear. He quickly retreated and hid among a group of Supreme Beings. The remaining Supreme Beings looked at each other and stood in front of the Zhang family's young master. They had helped him when he was in danger, and it could be considered as doing the Zhang family a favor. A favor from the heavenly Misty Zhang family was worth a lot of money. Thus, the remaining Supreme Beings chose to attack, and they confronted Xiao Bai. Although they felt a terrifying pressure from Xiao Bai's body, these Supreme Beings didn't think much of it. Although it was pressure, it wasn't the pressure of heaven and earth. This meant that the puppet in front of them couldn't be an existence of the divine physique echelon. Divine physique echelon experts had broken the Supreme Being's shackles, and they could communicate with heaven and earth. Thus, they had the pressure of heaven and earth, and they could crush Supreme Beings. However, since the puppet in front of them didn't have the pressure of heaven and earth, it was naturally at the Supreme Being level. They were all Supreme Beings, so what was there to be afraid of? With so many Supreme Beings, they could crush this puppet to death. Destroy this puppet for me. This King thing actually dared to provoke me. Also, capture that stinky chef for me. I want to slowly kill him. The Zhang family's young master hid behind a group of Supreme Beings, and he instantly felt much more at ease. His courage also returned, and he became arrogant again. He shouted at the top of his lungs. The Lin family's third young master was a little speechless as he looked at the Zhang family's young master. Weren't you laughing at me just now? Why don't you continue laughing? The Lin family's third young master sneered as he looked at the Zhang family's young master. The Zhang family's young master's face darkened. Being laughed at by his rival in love, he was instantly displeased, and he could only direct his anger at Bufang. All of you attack. A loud roar resounded. The Supreme Beings instantly burst out their true energy. The true energy of several Supreme Beings burst out at the same time, and their explosive power couldn't be underestimated. In the distance, Nangong Wan, who was holding her chin, blinked her beautiful eyes and watched this scene with a trace of curiosity. With so many supreme martial artists attacking at the same time, what should Bufang do? Nangong Wan narrowed her eyes as she watched Bufang calmly put away the wok of oil and walk into the store with a wooden barrel. She fell in a deep thought. Boom, boom, boom. An intense rumbling sound pulled her back to reality. With a tug of his palm leaf-shaped hand, the Supreme Being felt a burst of pain in his balls. With a casual toss, all the Supreme Beings were taken care of. Shock. Everyone was shocked. Was that a freaking puppet? How could there be such an awesome puppet? The crowd that had been crowding around to watch the show all felt a cold wind blow past their bodies. It was as if they were the ones who were stripped naked. Looking at the naked Supreme Beings lying on the ground, they wailed in pain, They couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Defeating a dozen supreme beings wasn't scary. What was scary was actually stripping a dozen supreme beings naked. That puppet was indeed as perverted as its master. One was cooking feces in public, and the other was stripping other people's clothes in public. When did such a pair of weirdos come to heavenly Mist City? The Zhang family's young master was dumbstruck. His mouth was wide open, and his face was filled with disbelief. His brain seemed to have short-circuited, and he couldn't wrap his head around it. Suddenly, his eyes moved, and endless fear spread out. He discovered that the puppet was actually less than an inch away from him. Those purple eyes were like a nightmare. "I'm from the Zhang family. Put me down. Don't be like this. Stop." The Zhang family's young master was on the verge of tears. This was actually a freaking divine physique echelon puppet. How could there be a divine physique echelon puppet in heavenly Mist City? Although he was somewhat hedonistic and ignorant, he was still a disciple of the Zhang family, and he was still aware of some common sense. Wasn't a divine physique echelon puppet only in the puppet sect? Rip. Xiao Bai ignored the Zhang family's young master, who was howling like a pig being slaughtered. He directly tore apart his coquettish clothes and threw him into the distance. The white buttocks streaked across the sky, and the surrounding people let out cries of alarm. So freaking white. The Lin family's third young master was also watching excitedly. Seeing his rival in love being stripped, he was actually somewhat excited. However, a chill suddenly locked onto the Lin family's third young master, who was excitedly looking at the naked Zhang family's young master. The Lin family's third young master's face stiffened, and he turned his head with great difficulty. He was met with a pair of purple eyes. "Why did you lock onto me? I'm not. Don't do this." Another wave of miserable howls, which sounded like a pig being slaughtered, resounded. It was another pair of white buttocks. The Lin family's third young master had coincidentally fallen beside the Zhang family's young master. Swish! After dealing with everyone, the metallic wings on Xiao Bai's back retracted. His purple eyes flickered, and he slowly turned around. He walked toward the store, and his huge figure quickly disappeared into the darkness. Bu Fong patted Xiao Bai's belly and nodded his head in satisfaction. As expected, with Xiao Bai around, it would be much easier for him. Those who caused trouble would be directly stripped and thrown out, which was much easier than smashing them with a walk. Calmly walking to the entrance, Bu Fong looked at the Lin family's third young master and the others, who were crawling up from the ground in dejection. When he saw them covering their buttocks and disappearing into the crowd, the corners of Bu Fong's mouth couldn't help but twitch. "The store will continue its business for today." After saying this, Bu Fong turned around and returned to the store. Nangong Wan recovered from her shock, and her eyes curved into crescent moons. She hopped out of the elixir store and ran toward Bu Fong's store. She discovered that this store was becoming more and more interesting. If the Lin family's third young master and the Zhang family's young master saw this scene, they would be so angry that they would vomit blood. They were fighting for the affections of their goddess, but the goddess in their hearts was eagerly running toward the store that forced them to run around naked. Why did reality have to be so cruel? What happened in the Cloud Mist restaurant quickly spread throughout the heavenly Mist City. The Lin family's third young master was stripped and ran around naked on the street. The Zhang family's second young master tore apart his clothes and ran around naked for the goddess Nangongwan. The Lin family's third young master and the Zhang family's second young master ran around the heavenly Mist City naked to see whose buttocks were whiter. As the saying goes, good news doesn't leave the house, but bad news spreads for 1,000 miles. In just a short while, the news about the disciples of the two great families running around naked on the street spread throughout the entire heavenly Mist City. Nangong Wan, who was filled with curiosity, returned to the store. She sat in the same position as the day before. "What do you want to eat?" Bu Fong calmly looked at Nangong Wan. Nangong Wan blinked her long eyelashes and took off her veil, revealing a beautiful face that could topple nations. She smiled at Bu Fong and said, "Owner Bu, are you a member of the puppet sect? That puppet is really powerful. The puppet sect. I have never heard of it. Bu Fong was taken aback for a moment before he expressionlessly replied. Nangong Wan sweetly smiled and said, "Only the puppet sect can create a divine physique echelon puppet. I already said that I am not a member of the puppet sect. What do you want to eat? If you don't want to eat, please leave." Bu Fong furrowed his brows. He felt that this woman was a little strange. He really didn't know anything about the puppet sect. Fine, fine. It doesn't matter if you don't want to admit it. I will kindly remind you that in half a month, the triennial competition for the quota to enter the secret realm will be held in Heavenly Mist City. All the sects in the Hidden Dragon Continent will send their experts there. The experts of the puppet sect will also be there. You should take care of yourself, Nangong Wan said. Then, what do you want to eat? Bu Fong asked. Nangong Wan pouted her red lips. She had kindly reminded him, but he didn't appreciate it. Could it be that he really wasn't a member of the puppet sect? But what was up with that divine physique echelon puppet? Forget it. She would let Aunt Moo investigate it later. Give me a bowl of stinky beans. Wait, give me egg fried rice. Since this is a restaurant, the other dishes here should be pretty good, right? Nangong Wan thought for a moment and said. She propped up her chin and looked at Bu Fong. You will soon understand the taste of my restaurant's dishes. Bu Fong stood up and said calmly. Chapter 429. Heavenly Mist City Pill Tower. A towering pill tower stood majestically in the middle of the Heavenly Mist City. It was simple and unadorned, but it was filled with the aura of time. On the eaves of the pill tower, there were small holes that constantly emitted pill energy. That pill energy was multicolored, and it was like dense clouds that lingered around the tower. The eaves of the pill tower were always emitting pill energy. This was because most of the alchemists in the Heavenly Mist City were gathered in the pill tower. These alchemists borrowed the convenience of the pill tower to refine elixirs, and they were able to surpass their own standards. Moreover, the alchemists of a higher grade would usually stay in the pill tower. Once these high-cloud alchemists started to refine elixirs, they would create a great scene. The amount of spirit herbs they used was definitely not something an ordinary person could imagine. Naturally, the pill energy emitted from them was also extremely dense. This pill energy gathered around the pill tower, and it was like many multicolored clouds that lingered around it. It made the pill tower even more beautiful and magnificent. On this day, the heavy iron gate of the pill tower suddenly opened, and it emitted a creaking sound that seemed as if it wanted to travel through time. Dense spirit energy surged out from the gate of the pill tower, and the majestic pill fragrance caused people to sink into it. A silhouette slowly walked out from the door. It was neither fast nor slow. As he walked out, the iron gate of the pill tower slowly closed, isolating the inside of the tower. It was a young man with a head full of red hair. The young man was very handsome, and his face looked as if it had been carved by a knife. The aura on his body surged, and as he walked, his true energy surged, causing his hair to flutter uncontrollably. From afar, it seemed as if he had fused with the heavens and earth. The young man walked out of the pill tower, and he stood on the spot. He stretched his body, and the sound of bones cracking could be heard from his body. The young man wore a black alchemist robe, and on his alchemist robe, there was a white cloud embroidered on it. That cloud was vivid and lifelike, and it attracted people's eyes. This young man was impressively a one-cloud alchemist. Soon, there were people outside the pill tower, and they quickly came to welcome the young man. Congratulations, Master Wuck, for coming out of seclusion. It was an old man with a peaceful smile on his face. He approached the young man and warmly congratulated him. Behind the old man stood a group of people from the Nangong family. Nangong Ming was among the crowd. He widened his eyes and looked at the young man respectfully. Nangong Wuck, the eldest son of the Nangong family's head and Nangong Wan's elder brother, was a genius who was about to become a two-cloud alchemist. This was a true monstrous genius. Not only was his cultivation strong, but his talent in alchemy was even more shocking. Father hasn't returned from the secret realm yet, Nangong Wuk glanced at the gentle old man and asked calmly. Soon, the competition for the slots to enter the secret territory will begin soon. The patriarch should be returning from the secret territory soon. At that time, the strength of our Nangong family will rise to another level, the old man said with a smile. A smile appeared on Nangong Wuk's handsome face. Great Elder is really confident in our Nangong family. The old man was still smiling as if he was harmless. Where's my naughty sister? You haven't caused any trouble recently, have you? Nangong Wuk asked as he slowly walked forward. When he mentioned Nangong Wan, Nangong Wuk's eyes slightly narrowed. The second miss recently opened an elixir store and went there to sell elixirs. The old man said with a sigh. She is the dignified second miss of the Nangong family. Why would she go there to sell elixirs? What a scandal. Nangong Wuk slightly furrowed his brows. Nangong Ming, who was in the crowd, felt his heart shudder. He mustered up his courage and said, Patriarch Wuk. While the second miss was selling elixirs, she was entangled with a nearby restaurant. Moreover what? Nangong Wuk's eyes turned and fell on Nangong Ming. His aura suddenly rose. Moreover, the second miss personally ate the extremely stinky food made by that restaurant. Everyone was talking about it. The second miss of the Nangong family actually ate **T. Nangong Ming trembled in fear. The pressure emitted by Nangong Wuk's body made it difficult for him to breathe. His whole body was drenched in cold sweat. She's simply making trouble. Does this lass intend to throw away the face of my Nangong family? Moreover, since when was there a restaurant in the heavenly Mist City? Moreover, she even dared to feed that kind of food to her? Does she not want to live anymore? Nangong Wuk's gaze became cold, and he snorted. Nangong Ming was overjoyed. If Nangong Wuk were to take action, then the restaurant would surely cease to exist. As he recalled the humiliation Bu Fong had brought him, the madness in Nangong Ming's heart became even more intense. You shall go back first. I want to go to that restaurant. Nangong Ming, take me there. Suddenly, Nangong Ming's eyes flashed. Nangong Wuk appeared beside him and patted his shoulder with his palm. Nangong Ming felt a great pressure and his legs became weak. If you lied to me or exaggerated, you should know the consequences. Nangong Wuk looked at Nangong Ming and smiled brightly. His red hair fluttered in the wind, causing Nangong Ming's heart to tremble. Nangong Wan was bored to death as she sat in the Cloud Mist restaurant. Outside the restaurant, there was a group of curious onlookers. The goddess actually came to this store again. Could it be that this store was really so charming? Did that thing, which smelled like excrement, really attract their goddess's taste? The fragrance of the stinky tofu was still lingering in their minds. Many of them couldn't help but frown when they recalled that stench. As expected of a goddess, her taste was really unique. Nangong Wan looked toward the pitch-black kitchen. Her long eyelashes suddenly trembled and her eyes lit up. She saw a slender and thin figure slowly walking out of the kitchen. Bu Fong was holding a bowl of egg-fried rice. The egg-fried rice, which seemed as if it was made of gold, seemed to be emitting rays of light. It was extremely beautiful. Bu Fong placed the bowl of egg-fried rice in front of Nangong Wan. He pulled a chair and sat opposite to her, indicating that she could start eating. This is your egg-fried rice. Please enjoy your meal. Egg-fried rice. Nangong Wan looked at the egg-fried rice, which was emitting a faint radiance, in front of her in amazement. She had never eaten egg-fried rice before, and this was the first time she realized that it was so beautiful. In Heavenly Mist City, restaurants were almost extinct. Only the Cloud Mist restaurant remained. Nangong Wan had never been to the Cloud Mist restaurant before, so she didn't have the chance to taste Yang Meiji's dark egg-fried rice. The steaming hot egg-fried rice seemed to be reflected in her eyes, and she was somewhat amazed. It was as exquisite as a work of art. Nangong Wan suddenly didn't dare to eat it. She subconsciously raised her head and looked at Bu Fong. She played with her red hair. Eat? What are you looking at? Bu Fong was somewhat puzzled. He didn't understand what was going on. This woman was really strange. Nangong Wan bit her red lips and picked up the porcelain spoon beside the blue and white porcelain plate. She scooped up a spoonful of egg-fried rice. When she scooped up the egg-fried rice, the pearl-like rice grains emitted a luster. The fragrance of the egg instantly burst out from the hole in the rice. Bang! Boundless energy waves surged out of the rice, and Nangong Wan's eyes were filled with amazement. The fragrance assaulted her face, and Nangong Wan couldn't help but twitch her delicate nose. How could she describe it with just one word? It was simply too fragrant. That fragrance seemed to penetrate deep into her bones. It entered her pores and seeped into her skin. It seeped into her bones, and her whole body couldn't help but tremble. This fragrance wasn't something that the multi-taste fasting pill could compare to. Her red lips parted, and her pearly white teeth parted. She stuffed the spoonful of egg-fried rice into her mouth. When it entered her mouth, Nangong Wan's eyes widened, and she let out a moan. Surging hot air rose from the gaps between the rice grains, and it gushed out from the walls of her mouth. It was as if there were thousands of gentle hands massaging her mouth. That feeling was too wonderful, and it was hard to describe. Nangong Wan's whole body tensed up, and her face turned red. She started to chew the egg-fried rice, and her mouth started to chew faster and faster. With a gulp, she swallowed the mouthful of egg-fried rice. Nangong Wan let out a moan, and she exhaled a mouthful of hot air. She raised her head, and her white neck was exposed. Bufong was somewhat astonished. This woman's reaction was too exaggerated. Although the egg-fried rice was delicious, this woman's reaction was as if she had eaten the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. What the hell? Actually, Bufong didn't know that there were very few restaurants in Heavenly Mist City, and there weren't any delicious dishes. The people of Heavenly Mist City only ate the multi-taste fasting pill. Although the multi-taste fasting pill was practical, its taste wasn't anything worth praising. It was nowhere near as delightful as the egg-fried rice. It was Nangong Wan's first time eating such a delicacy, and she felt as if her heart was about to melt. It was as if her heart had been captured. The fragrance of the egg-fried rice filled her heart, and it seemed as if it had turned into an ocean. She felt as if her naked body was swimming in this ocean. It was extremely refreshing. Nangong Wan ignored Bufong's astonished gaze, and she scooped another spoonful of egg-fried rice in her mouth. Oh, why is it so delicious? Nangong Wan's voluptuous body trembled, and she exclaimed in admiration as she ate. Bufong felt somewhat embarrassed by her praise. Then, he looked at Nangong Wan crazily stuffing the egg-fried rice in her mouth in an extremely terrifying manner. Her cheeks were bulging from the stuffing. Her red lips were glossy, and they emitted a different kind of allure. The fragrance of the egg-fried rice, accompanied by Nangong Wan's crazed and hungry posture, slowly drifted out of the store. The customers who were crowding outside the store were all stunned. Why did it turn into a fragrance? Is there something wrong with my nose? This smell is so fragrant. What is it? It's so fragrant that it makes my heart itch. Damn it. A moment ago, there was a stench similar to that of excrement, and now there is this fragrance. Could it be that I have smelled excrement for too long, and now even the smell of excrement smells fragrant? The customers were dumbfounded for a moment before they started to sniff the air. Sniff. La. The orderly sniffing almost scared Bufong, who was in the store. He thought that this group of people was going to cause trouble, and he almost called Xiao Bai out. However, when he saw the situation clearly, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. Bang! After Nangong Wan licked the porcelain plate clean, she slammed the plate on the table. Owner Boo, it's really delicious. Give me another serving. Each person can only order one serving of this store's dishes, Bufong said expressionlessly. Nangong Wan's face was still flushed, and she pouted. Give me another serving, Nangong Wan said coquettishly, but when she saw Bufong's expressionless face, she rolled her eyes and chose to give up. Actually, you can order the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. It's much more delicious than the egg-fried rice, Bufong said earnestly as he looked at Nangong Wan, who still wanted more. A bowl of egg-fried rice was only 10 crystals, but the Buddha jumps over the wall soup was worth 10,000 crystals. Bufang wasn't lying. Nan Gongwan was somewhat moved, and her beautiful eyes widened. Bufang was also somewhat excited, and he looked at her with a sincere gaze. Chapter 430. Buddha jumps over the wall soup? Should I order a bowl of Buddha jumps over the wall soup? Nan Gongwan suddenly felt somewhat conflicted. Although the price of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup was equivalent to an 8th grade elixir, compared to an 8th grade elixir, the Buddha jumps over the wall soup could only satisfy a momentary craving. Was it worth it? Nan Gongwan bit her red lips and felt extremely conflicted. She blinked her long eyelashes and looked at Bufang's face. He was looking at her with a sincere gaze. Trust me, the taste of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup won't disappoint you. Bufang earnestly nodded his head. Xiaopi, who was lying on his shoulder, waved its sickle-like claws as if it was responding to Bufang's words. Better than the egg-fried rice? Wasn't that obvious? A bowl of egg-fried rice was only 10 crystals, but a bowl of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup cost 10,000 crystals. They weren't even on the same level. It was just like the multi-taste fasting pill and the 8th grade essence burst pill. They weren't on the same level. While Nan Gongwan was still hesitating, her heart suddenly shook. She couldn't help but recall the reason for the increase in her true energy the day before. It was obvious that Bufang's dishes weren't that simple. Could it be that there was something special about the Buddha jumps over the wall soup? Nan Gongwan's eyes flickered and she squinted her eyes. She looked at Bufang and licked her red lips. She smiled and said, "Then give me a bowl of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. If I find out that you're lying to me, I will make sure that your store can't continue operating in heavenly Mist City." Nan Gongwan waved her small fist and snorted. When he heard Nan Gongwan order the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, the corners of Bufang's mouth curled up. He was somewhat delighted. After all, it was all about cultivation. As he thought of this, Bufang's gaze toward Nan Gongwan became much gentler. This woman was truly a rich woman. Wait a moment. Bufang stood up, turned around, and entered the kitchen. The price of Buddha jumps over the wall was high, and the cooking difficulty was high as well. Furthermore, there were many ingredients involved. Hence, Bufang had to devote himself seriously. Buddha jumps over the wall was placed on the menu by the system, so the system would naturally provide the ingredients. This saved Bufang a lot of trouble. After all, when Bufang cooked the Buddha jumps over the wall soup for the first time, the ingredients he used were all collected by himself. However, compared to the ingredients he collected himself, the ingredients provided by the system were much cheaper. Back then, Bufang had used the meat of 2 supreme beasts. Dense gas drifted out of the kitchen. The smell of the gas was a little strange. It was mellow and abnormally thick, but it didn't have the fragrance of the egg-fried rice that seemed to want to drill into one's skin. It was simple and elegant, but it was impossible to get rid of. It was a fragrance that lingered in one's heart. An oddly shaped porcelain jar was placed in the Black Turtle constellation walk. Under the Black Turtle constellation walk, the golden 10,000 bestial flame burned fiercely, emitting surging heat waves. The Heaven Alps spirit spring water in the wok was bubbling. On the lid of the porcelain jar was a carving of a Buddha. The Buddha's face was peaceful, and it seemed as though it was emitting a boundless, gentle radiance. The radiance wasn't blazing, and as the cooking continued, the Buddha seemed as though it was coming to life. It became vivid and lifelike, and it was extremely eye-catching. After Nan Gongwan finished her egg-fried rice, she stood up in boredom. She paced back and forth in the store, as though she was observing the store. The 5 Stripes Path Understanding Tree attracted her attention. To actually use the 5 Stripes Path Understanding Tree as a potted plant of the store, Ownerbu really spent a lot of money. Outside the store, the eyes of the surrounding customers widened. The aroma from before had piqued their curiosity. They were so curious that their hearts itched. Originally, they wanted to pay attention to the actions of their goddess, but now they were really attracted by the aroma wafting out of the store. Suddenly, a strange spiritual energy fluctuation spread out from the store. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, and they were all dumbfounded. As residents of heavenly Mist City, they were all too familiar with this kind of fluctuation. Within the store, Nangong Wan's rosy mouth was slightly agape. She shifted her gaze from the five stripes path understanding tree to the direction of the kitchen in astonishment. Didn't we agree to go and cook? Why would there be the fluctuation of an elixir taking shape? Moreover, this spiritual energy fluctuation, a ninth grade elixir is about to take shape. As a genius who is about to become a one-cloud alchemist, Nangong Wan was naturally very familiar with this fluctuation. She took in a deep breath, and her gaze focused in the direction of the kitchen. In the darkness, a figure slowly walked out. The figure held a huge, oddly shaped jar in his hand. That jar seemed to be emitting a radiance, and intense spiritual energy fluctuations were constantly surging out from it. The feeling of an endless stream of spiritual energy was exactly the same as a ninth grade elixir. Bu Fong expressionlessly walked out of the kitchen and placed the jar on the table. Nangong Wan hurriedly walked over, and when she saw that there was a Buddha sitting cross-legged on the jar, who seemed to be smiling at her, she became even more astonished. This is the Buddha jumps over the wall soup? Nangong Wan asked in astonishment. It's the real Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Bu Fong nodded his head. He raised his palm, and a wave of true energy revolved around his palm. A buzzing sound resounded. Then, Bu Fong placed his palm on the Buddha. The radiance became even more intense, and in front of Nangong Wan, it seemed as though the Buddha was reciting scriptures. Crack! With a light sound, the lid was opened by Bu Fong. Sizzle waves of hot air accompanied by surging spiritual energy gushed out of the porcelain jar after the lid was opened. The radiance gradually dimmed and finally disappeared. What followed was a wave of fragrance. This fragrance spread out, and in an instant, it overshadowed the unforgettable impression left in their hearts by the egg-fried rice. Nangong Wan was the first to bear the brunt of the fragrance, and her face instantly turned red. She took a step back, and her voluptuous body tensed up. "It smells so good," Nangong Wan said in a daze. The speed at which the fragrance spread was extremely fast. In just an instant, it had spread out of the store, and everyone outside could smell it. If the fragrance before the lid was opened was as gentle as water, then after the lid was opened, the fragrance of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup was like raging waves. Everyone felt as though they were intoxicated by the waves of fragrance. The fragrance changed again. It's so rich. It smells so good. What is this smell? Why is there such a fragrance in this world that has been deeply engraved in your mind? Just by smelling this fragrance, I'm already reacting. I can't stand it anymore. No one can stop me. I want to go and take a look. I want to eat it. The customers went crazy and their eyes widened. Some of them couldn't bear it any longer, and they entered the store. As soon as they entered, they saw the source of the fragrance. It was a jar of Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Waves of energy soared into the sky, and they seemed to be real. They were both shocked by it. Bu Fong glanced at them, but he didn't say anything. He just picked up the bowl. He fished out a bowl of brown soup from the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. This soup wasn't greasy at all. It was clear and transparent. He continued to fish and fished out a piece of 8th grade spirit beast meat. He placed the bowl of soup in front of Nangong Wan and indicated for her to taste it. Nangong Wan was extremely excited. The density of the spiritual energy in this dish was beyond her understanding. It was even denser than elixirs. How'd he do it? It was simply inconceivable. Could it be that Onurbu used an alchemy technique? There was no mistaking it. That was definitely the case. He used an alchemy technique to cook a dish. Only in this way could he preserve the spiritual energy within the ingredients. This was the reason why the dish was filled with spiritual energy. Nangong Wan's face was flushed, and her voluptuous chest heaved up and down. She was somewhat excited, and it seemed as though she had discovered Bu Fong's secret. After she calmed down, her gaze fell on the soup in the blue and white porcelain bowl. The fragrance of the soup wafted out, and it greatly increased Nan Gong Wan's appetite. She scooped up a spoonful of the soup, opened her red lips, and the soup flowed smoothly into her mouth. In the next moment, Nan Gong Wan let out a soft moan. Her eyelashes trembled, and her eyes widened. Master walked this way. That store is located in the area that our Nan Gong family recently developed to sell multi-taste fasting pills. Every day, this store will cook something that stinks like excrement. The stench wafting through the air caused the flow of customers in this area to decrease. It's because it's so disgusting. That stench is simply unbearable. Nan Gong Ming led Nan Gong Wuk, who was wearing a one-cloud alchemy robe, toward the Cloud Mist restaurant. He was somewhat nervous and apprehensive. Nan Gong Wuk was giving him too much pressure. As the successor of the Nan Gong family, Nan Gong Wuk's talent and cultivation were top-notch in the Pill Palace. It must be known that Nan Gong Wuk managed to get into the top 20 of the Young Alchemist competition organized by the Pill Palace. Although the Heavenly Mist City was also a pill city, it was ranked last among the 3 pill cities. Nan Gong Wuk managed to defeat the alchemy geniuses of the Heavenly Pill City and the Heavenly Shine City and get into the top 20. It must be known that the Heavenly Pill City and the Heavenly Shine City had 5 clouds alchemists. With the guidance of such a high-level alchemist, the geniuses of those big cities would naturally be extremely terrifying. Even so, Nan Gong Wuk still managed to get into the top 20. He had created the best result for any alchemist in the Heavenly Mist City. Nan Gong Wuk could feel the pressure from such a genius just by touching him. Nan Gong Wuk's red hair fluttered in the wind. His gaze was somewhat lazy as he glanced at Nan Gong Ming and nodded in response. Soon, the two of them arrived at the area where the Cloud Mist restaurant was located. Elixir stores were opened all around the Cloud Mist restaurant. Some of these elixir stores belonged to the Nan Gong family, while others belonged to other families. These elixir stores were bustling with business. However, when Nan Gong Ming and Nan Gong Wuk arrived today, they discovered that the surrounding elixir stores were unexpectedly empty. Is this the Nan Gong family's newly opened area for selling multi-taste fasting pills? Isn't it a little too deserted? Nan Gong Wuk furrowed his brows and said. Nan Gong Ming opened his mouth. His forehead was filled with cold sweat. How could he know? It was obviously very popular a while ago, right? Could it be that the restaurant caused trouble again? Master Wuk, that restaurant must have done something again. They must have snatched away our customers. Nan Gong Ming said hatefully, for the sake of our Nan Gong family's reputation and benefits, you must uphold justice for us. Sure, don't speak. Nan Gong Wuk suddenly squinted his eyes and used his finger to cover his mouth. He spoke in a gentle voice. The words that Nan Gong Ming was about to say froze. He glared at Nan Gong Wuk. An indistinct fragrance wafted over. It was like a cool breeze caressing his face. Nan Gong Wuk couldn't help but close his eyes to savor the fragrance. 8th grade exploding flame boar and 8th grade storm devil hawk. It's a little strange. There seems to be the smell of cloud mist grass. Interesting. Are they refining elixirs? Nan Gong Wuk closed his eyes and muttered several names. The corners of his mouth curled up. Chapter 431. Nan Gong Wuk squinted his eyes and became intoxicated by the fragrance. He tilted his head, and the corners of his mouth curled upwards. The fragrance lingered around his nose and stimulated his taste buds as he inhaled and exhaled. He muttered in a low voice, but he would occasionally furrow his brows. He felt that he was refining elixirs, but he was sure that this fragrance wasn't the fragrance of elixirs. The fragrance of elixirs wasn't this pure. This fragrance was so pure that it caused Nan Gong Wuk's heart to surge. Nan Gong Ming was somewhat stupefied. He didn't know what Nan Gong Wuk was talking about. He could smell the fragrance in the air, but he didn't find it strange. This was the area where multi-taste fasting pills were sold. Shouldn't it be normal to smell the fragrance of elixirs here? There was something wrong with Nan Gong Wuk's state of mind. Why was he so intoxicated? With his experience, how could he care about the fragrance of these multi-taste fasting pills? The fragrance is coming from that direction. Let's go there. Nangong Wuk opened his eyes and looked in a certain direction. He took the lead and strode forward. Nangong Ming was startled. Wasn't that the direction of the fragrance coming from the Cloud Mist restaurant? Was the fragrance coming from the Cloud Mist restaurant? Impossible. The fragrance coming from the restaurant should be the unbelievably stinky smell. Why was the way it was opened was different from what he knew? Nangong Ming's heart suddenly trembled. As he followed behind Nangong Wuk, he prayed in his heart. However, the closer he got to the restaurant, the more despair he felt. In front of the Cloud Mist restaurant, there was a large group of people. Their noses twitched as they sniffed the fragrance in the air. Everyone had an intoxicated look on their faces. How could this be? Weren't they all disgusted by the stench coming from the restaurant? Is that the stinky restaurant you told me about? Nangong Wuk asked as he looked at Nangong Ming with a strange expression. Nangong Ming was on the verge of tears. It wasn't like this before. The owner of this restaurant was really cooking excrement. Young master, I clearly... You don't need to say anything. From now on, you don't need to say anything. Nangong Wuk patted Nangong Ming's shoulder and heaved a heavy sigh. Then, he turned around and headed toward the restaurant. Nangong Wuk's cultivation was very strong. He had already broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles. Thus, he easily squeezed through the crowd and entered the restaurant. As soon as he appeared, he saw Nangong Wan, who was sitting in the restaurant and eating with her mouth covered in grease. Instantly, he raised one of his eyebrows in surprise. Did this girl not care about her image? The mouthful of soup was rich and fragrant. In an instant, Nangong Wan's eyes widened. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The soup was filled with surging spiritual energy, and this spiritual energy caused her to feel as if her entire body had been cleansed by it. The soup melted in her mouth like silk, like a burning flame, causing the true qi in her body to boil unconsciously. This feeling, Nangong Wan was stupefied. She felt as if her true energy cultivation had undergone a small increase at this moment, and the bottleneck that had been blocking her for a long time seemed to be loosening. This soup was unexpectedly so miraculous. Moreover, Nangong Wan's sense of taste was very sharp. She could taste the flavor of many ingredients in the soup, and she became even more astonished. Cloud mist grass, colorful fruit, 8 osmanthus spirit leaf. These were the ingredients needed to refine a 9th-grade elixir. Honorbu had unexpectedly used them to cook. It was simply a reckless waste of natural resources. Wait a minute. It didn't seem like a reckless waste of natural resources. She was shocked to discover that Bu Fong's Buddha jumps over the wall soup displayed the medicinal properties of these ingredients to the extreme. Moreover, they completely fused with the ingredients, causing the fragrance to assail her nostrils. It was so rich that it was intoxicating. The medicinal effects seemed to be even more potent than those of an elixir. Is this the 8th-grade exploding flame pork? Nangong Wan finished the soup, opened her red lips, and exhaled a mouthful of hot air. She picked up a pig trotter from the bowl and blinked her beautiful eyes as she asked, "Oh, yes, it is the trotter of an 8th-grade exploding flame pork." Bu Fong was somewhat astonished. This woman was unexpectedly able to taste so many ingredients. It must be known that some of the ingredients had already melted, and there was no trace of them. This was especially true for the spirit herbs and elixirs. Only their taste remained in the soup. However, this woman was still able to taste many of them. It seemed like this woman had the potential to become a super foodie. Bu Fong earnestly thought to himself. After Nangong Wan recovered from her astonishment, she hugged the pig trotter and started to eat it. They ate with great relish. A beautiful woman hugging a pig trotter and eating it. This scene was truly unbearable to look at. At the very least, the group of people blocking the entrance were already dumbstruck. When Nangong Wuk squeezed his way in, he also saw this scene. He clearly understood that his sister was proud and arrogant, and she cared a lot about her image. However, at this moment, she was hugging a pig trotter and eating it. What image did she have? Nangong Wuk suddenly felt like laughing. The corners of his mouth curled up, and he calmly walked inside. Bu Fong looked at the handsome man who was walking toward him in confusion, and he slightly raised his brows. That man pulled out a chair and sat in front of Nan Gongwan. He curled up his lips and stared at her. Nan Gongwan, who was earnestly eating the pig trotter, suddenly felt a playful gaze. She looked at him out of the corner of her eyes while she ate the pig trotter. Cough. When Nan Gongwan saw him, she almost choked on the pig trotter. Nan Gongwuk, why did you come out of seclusion? Nan Gongwan threw the pig trotter that she had eaten to the bone on the table. She puffed up her cheeks and stared at Nan Gongwuk. You still haven't reached the 2 clouds alchemist level. Nan Gongwan waved her oily palm and stood up. She took out a pair of wings from the jar and was about to stuff it into her mouth. Was the Buddha jumps over the wall soup delicious? Nonsense. Of course it was delicious. It was so delicious that it made people want to cry. At this moment, Nan Gongwan had an urge to cry. Compared to the egg-fried rice, the Buddha jumps over the wall soup was even more delicious. The pig trotter was fat, but not greasy. It was extremely soft like cotton. Even she, who never ate fatty meat, ate it happily. The soup was so delicious that Nan Gongwan couldn't help but moan in pleasure. Lass, are you a pig? Just when Nan Gongwan was about to bite into the chicken wing, she discovered that the chicken wing in her hand had disappeared. A playful voice drifted over. Nan Gongwuk was holding the chicken wing and smelling it with a face full of enjoyment. Sure enough, there's a kind of 5 grains flour. This is the smell. Is he cooking ingredients as if they were used to refine pills? Interesting. Lass, since you want to lose weight, let me, your brother, give it a try. Nan Gongwan was infuriated. She had spent 10,000 crystals to buy this Buddha jumps over the wall soup. How could this guy be so shameless? This chicken wing was not an ordinary chicken wing. It was the wing meat of the storm devil eagle that Nan Gongwuk had identified earlier. The chicken wing was simmered just right. The meat was extremely tender, and it had an orange-yellow luster, which greatly stimulated one's appetite. Nan Gongwuk didn't hesitate and planned to take a bite of it. However, just when he was about to take a bite, he discovered that a slender and fair hand had blocked his mouth. Nan Gongwuk was taken aback. Nan Gongwon was also taken aback. She subconsciously looked at Bufong, who had extended his hand to block Nan Gongwuk's mouth. I'm sorry. Our restaurant has some rules that we can't share our dishes. If you want to eat it, you can order another portion. Bufong looked at Nan Gongwuk and said expressionlessly. Nan Gongwuk looked at Bufong with a strange expression. This guy in front of him actually blocked his mouth? Could it be that this guy didn't recognize him? Nan Gongwuk raised the chicken wing and pointed at Nan Gongwan as he said to Bufong, "This woman, she's my sister. Can't I eat her?" Nan Gongwan glared at him and snatched the chicken wing back. Nan Gongwuk, you should be more shameless, Nan Gongwan said. No, the Buddha jumps over the wall soup can't be shared. Bufong retracted his hand in disgust. He had actually used his hand to block this man's mouth. Nan Gongwuk seemed to have realized something, and his face darkened. He wiped his mouth and spat lightly before standing up. I'll say it again. This woman is my sister. You want to win my sister with such a low level of comprehension? Don't you know that you have to bribe your brother-in-law? Nan Gongwuk looked at Bufong earnestly as he said this. Bufong was dumbfounded. What the hell? The corners of his mouth twitched, and he looked at the red-haired man in front of him as if he was looking at an idiot. Nan Gongwon was infuriated. Why did she have such a weird brother? Nan Gongwuk, what nonsense are you spouting? Nan Gongwuk patted the head of Nan Gongwan, who was about to go berserk while biting the chicken wing. He said, I understand. You don't even care about your image for this man. What is the point of explaining? I understand. Understand your ass. Understand. Nan Gongwan wished that she could slap Nan Gongwuk to death with her chicken wing. A serving of Buddha jumps over the wall soup costs 10,000 crystals. The menu is behind you. If you want to eat, then order. If you don't want to eat, then scram. Bufong was speechless when he saw this guy. He said expressionlessly, 10,000 crystals? So expensive? If you cheat your brother-in-law like this, you won't be able to get married. Nan Gongwuk grinned and glared at Bufong. Nan Gongwan shook her head speechlessly. She turned her head away and earnestly gnawed on her chicken wing. Out of sight, out of mind. Her brother was an idiot. Although he had an astonishing talent for alchemy, he was actually a very lazy and idiotic person. If her father hadn't forced him into the pill pagoda before he left, he wouldn't have gone into seclusion. Before her father left, he was not allowed to leave the pagoda until he became a two-cloud alchemist. Sure enough, this guy left the pagoda before he became a two-cloud alchemist. In Nangong Wuk's words, it was bad for his body if he couldn't hold it in. When the people outside saw Nangong Wuk, they burst into an uproar. This guy was an influential figure in the heavenly mist city. The future successor of the Nangong family had unexpectedly appeared in this restaurant. Could it be that this restaurant was backed by the Nangong family? It was no wonder that no one in the Nangong family's district cared about cooking feces. You really can't eat my sister's food? Let me tell you, you won't be able to win my brother-in-law's heart by doing this. Nangong Wuk sat back on his seat and said unwillingly. Bu Fong curled up the corners of his mouth and lightly exhaled. Xiao Bai, someone is causing trouble. Buzz a purple radiance flickered. Xiao Bai's figure slowly walked out of the kitchen. Nangong Wuk raised his brows and looked at Bu Fong before looking at Xiao Bai. In the end, he looked at Nangong Wan, who was eating happily. He grinned and said solemnly, "Don't cause trouble. Give me a bowl of Buddha jumps over the wall soup. I'm serious." After he said that, he seemed to have thought of something. He pouted at Nangong Wan and said, "Ask her for crystals. She's a rich woman." Chapter 432. Ask her for money. She is a rich woman. Nangong Wuk said this very calmly. After saying that, he habitually raised one of his eyebrows and gave Bu Fong a look that said, "Please believe me." Bu Fong was speechless. Were Nangong Wan and this clown brother and sister? The difference in their personalities was too big. Nangong Wan was more normal. Even though she was cold and aloof, she would still show some signs of being a girl after being conquered by his delicacies. But this Nangong Wuk was a complete clown who only knew how to cheat his sister. Nangong Wan spat out a chicken wing bone from her tender red lips. She widened her beautiful eyes and looked at Nangong Wuk angrily. What did he mean by a rich woman? That was the money that she had painstakingly earned from selling the pills that she had refined herself. Nangong Wuk, are you courting death? Nangong Wan said while gnashing her teeth. Every time she met her brother, she would get angry. Previously, her brother wanted to sell her to the young master of the Lin family, Lin Wuying. Lin Wuying had always regarded Nangong Wuk as his sworn enemy. Now, this guy wanted to be his brother-in-law. It was ridiculous. This time, it was even more ridiculous. What did he mean by she, Nangong Wan, would disregard her image for the sake of owner Bu? His dishes were really delicious. It was the charm of delicacies. This retard. I don't have money. Nangong Wan ignored him. She scooped up another bowl of brown soup from the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, blew on it, and gulped it down. Don't. Didn't I just come out of seclusion? I used up all the crystals I had. My dear sister, please help me pay for this. Nangong Wuk smelled the fragrance of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup and couldn't help but want to eat it. This fragrance was much more fragrant than the multi-taste fasting pill. Seeing Nangong Wan disregard her image while eating, this guy's heart was itching. It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned it. Now that he mentioned it, Nangong Wan was about to explode. What do you mean by once? You owe me more than 100,000 crystals, my dear brother. Nangong Wan really wanted to stuff the bones on the table into this guy's mouth. She had never seen such an unreliable and shameless brother. Ah, is that so? It seems like you're really a rich woman. It doesn't matter. Next time, when I refine a 2-mark spirit pill and earn some money, I'll definitely return it to you. Nangong Wuk laughed dryly. Then he patted his chest and guaranteed. I don't have money. I don't believe you. Nangong Wuk raised his eyebrows and said, Don't be like this, little sister. Can't you see that your elder brother is worried sick about your marriage? Hee hee. If you say another word, I will slap you. Nangong Wan sneered. Isn't it just 10,000 crystals? Speak, what are your conditions? Give me the recipe of the 1-mark spiritual pill that you obtained from the pill tower. Otherwise, there is no need to talk. Nangong Wan said. Okay, deal. Nangong Wuk was startled. Without any hesitation, he took out an old beast skin from his spatial spirit tool and slapped it on the table in a heroic manner. Nangong Wan was stunned. Wasn't pill formulas very important to the pill tower? Why did this guy agree so readily? Wasn't he afraid of being investigated by the pill tower? Nangong Wan was extremely puzzled. Do I really accept it? Nangong Wan held the bee skin in her hand and said to Nangong Wuk, just accept it, little sister. Do you think I, your brother, will lie to you? However, I still have to remind you that it is very dangerous to concoct a one-mark spirit pill before reaching the level of a one-cloud apothecary. If the cauldron explodes, it might ruin your beautiful face. Nangong Wuk raised his eyebrows and said. He ignored Nangong Wan, who was on the verge of exploding with rage, and turned his head to look at Bufong. Give me a portion of this Buddha jumps over the wall soup. You also heard that the rich woman agreed to pay for it. Bufong was somewhat speechless as he listened to the brother and sister's continuous negotiation. Just wait, Bufong said calmly. He turned around and walked toward the kitchen. Nangong Wuk's eyes lit up as he looked at Bufong's back. He stood up and followed Bufong into the kitchen. Bufong didn't stop. His figure quickly disappeared from the entrance of the kitchen. Nangong Wuk was actually very curious. When he smelled the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, he was extremely shocked. He discovered that this Buddha jumps over the wall soup was cooked using an alchemy technique. The spirit energy in the ingredients was perfectly preserved. To be able to achieve such a level meant that the alchemy technique used was extremely high-end. The technique used to extract spirit energy from ingredients was extremely important to an alchemist. Nangong Wuk wanted to know more, so he decided to follow Bufong into the kitchen. However, when he saw Bufong's figure disappear, Nangong Wuk suddenly felt an ice-cold aura lock onto him. This aura made his whole body shiver. Goosebumps appeared all over his body. This feeling, Nangong Wuk turned his head around and saw the cumbersome puppet, which was clad in armor, raising its fan-like hand and trying to grab him. At this moment, the pressure that the puppet gave him was enormous, causing his mind to tremble. He felt as though he was facing an opponent at the same level as him. However, it was precisely because of this that Nangong Wuk was shocked. Nangong Wuk was a divine physique echelon expert who had broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles. If the puppet was at the same level as him, didn't it mean that the puppet's battle prowess had reached the divine physique echelon? A puppet at the divine physique echelon. Wasn't this something only the sinister puppet sect could create? Could it be that the owner was a member of the puppet sect? However, that wasn't right. How could those idiots from the puppet sect cook? Xiao Bai's purple eyes flickered. The speed at which it waved its fan-like hand became faster and faster. The air seemed to be whistling. Nangong Wuk's aura changed. True energy flowed out of his dantian and covered his palm. Bang! Nangong Wuk's fist collided with Xiao Bai's. A shockwave instantly burst forth and created a strong gale in the store. However, this gale didn't cause any damage to the store. Nangong Wuk quickly retreated several steps. He was dumbstruck as he looked at Xiao Bai, who didn't even budge an inch. This puppet is really awesome. The kitchen is an important place. Unauthorized people are not allowed to enter. Xiao Bai, come back. When Nangong Wuk was staring at Xiao Bai with sparkling eyes, Bufong's indifferent voice suddenly came from a kitchen. Xiao Bai glanced at Nangong Wuk and slowly returned to the kitchen. Nangong Wuk, who didn't manage to barge into the kitchen, wasn't disappointed. He returned to his seat and looked at Nangong Wan, who had put away the bee skin and started to gorge herself on the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. He swallowed his saliva and said, "Little sister, how does this thing taste?" Nangong Wan looked at him vigilantly and didn't reply. Nangong Wuk suddenly felt embarrassed. As a little sister, how could she ignore her older brother? Sigh. Nangong Wuk, who was bored to death, stood up and started to wander around the store. 5 stripes path understanding tree. Not bad. Nangong Wuk stood in front of the path understanding tree and clicked his tongue in admiration. Then, he reached out his hand and plucked a green leaf from the 5 stripes path understanding tree. Buzz in the kitchen, Xiao Bai stuck half of his head out. A purple light shot out from his eyes and locked onto Nangong Wuk. Nangong Wuk immediately put the leaf back into the pot and solemnly waved his hand at Xiao Bai. So embarrassing. After a while, Bu Fong finished cooking another Buddha jumps over the wall soup and walked out of the kitchen with the jar of Buddha jumps over the wall soup. A dense light emitted from the Buddha on the porcelain jar. Nangong Wuk exclaimed in admiration. He could finally have a taste of this delicacy. When Bu Fong placed the Buddha jumps over the wall soup in front of him, Nangong Wuk couldn't wait to open the lid. His face was filled with enjoyment as he deeply inhaled the fragrance of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. As for those who stepped into the store, they also couldn't wait to order the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Our store's Buddha jumps over the wall soup is limited to 2 jars a day. Today's Buddha jumps over the wall soup has already been cooked. If you want to eat it, come earlier tomorrow, Bu Fong calmly said. Bu Fong's words made those people feel vexed and regretful. Oh my God, this taste is almost comparable to the 8 treasures chicken that old man Qian raised. Nangong Wuk tasted the Buddha jumps over the wall soup and instantly exclaimed in excitement. Everyone was stunned. What? 8 treasures chicken? The Pill Tower's 3 Clouds alchemist, Grandmaster Qian Zhong's 8 treasures chicken? What did Master Wuk's words mean? Could it be? Nangong Wuk seemed to have thought of something. She stared at Nangong Wuk and said with a sharp voice, Nangong Wuk, tell me the truth. You left the Pill Tower in advance. Was it because Grandmaster Qian chased you out? Was it because you slaughtered Grandmaster Qian's 8 treasures chicken? Nangong Wuk's body stiffened. Then he grabbed a pig trotter and started gnawing on it. He shook his head like a rattle drum. He wouldn't admit it even if he was beaten to death. When Nangong Wan saw Nangong Wuk's reaction, she couldn't help but rub her forehead. Oh my God, why didn't Grandmaster Qian beat this guy to death? The 8 treasures chicken was a precious divine realm spirit beast. Grandmaster Qian raised it for so many years. In the end, it was eaten by this kid. What kind of grudge did he have against him? I really didn't eat it. I only chopped off a chicken wing. I didn't kill the whole chicken. After raising it for a few months, the 8 treasures chicken's wings will grow back. Moreover, Grandmaster Qian is still in seclusion and doesn't know about this matter. That's why he didn't chase me out. I was the one who forced it out. Nangong Wuk's mouth was stuffed, and he spoke in a muffled voice. Nangong Wan sneered as she looked at him. Bu Fong's eyes lit up. 8 treasures chicken? That was good stuff. That was a grade 10 divine realm spirit beast. Moreover, it did not have any combat strength or attack power. Its entire body was filled with essence. If it was cooked using a special method, the taste would definitely be a delicacy in the world. The wings of the 8 treasures chicken could even be used as an ingredient for the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup. The Buddha jumps over the wall soup that Bu Fong was cooking now was only of the human grade. There was a huge gap between it and the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup, which was of a higher difficulty level. After all, the ingredients required were different. It turned out that the Pill Pagoda had something as good as the 8 treasure chicken. It seemed that he could borrow some chicken wings or something when he had the time. Bu Fong pondered. After those people came back to their senses, they also ordered their dishes. Even though there was no Buddha jumps over the wall soup, there were still sweet and sour ribs and egg fried rice. They had seen Nangong Wan eat egg fried rice, so they trusted her. They all ordered egg fried rice. Bu Fong returned to the kitchen and continued cooking. On the other hand, Black's favorite sweet and sour ribs hadn't been sold yet. Bowl after bowl of fragrant egg fried rice was carried out from the kitchen. The fragrance permeated the entire Cloud Mist restaurant. It was hazy, and clouds curled up in spirals. Just when everyone was eating in full swing, not far from the restaurant, 2 majestic groups of people rushed toward the store aggressively. Chapter 433. 2 groups of people came in a menacing manner. It was a majestic sight, bringing with it a cool and domineering aura. As the wind howled, The long robes of these people fluttered. It was as if there were sand and gravel rolling on the ground, creating a somber atmosphere. Lin Wuying's face was gloomy as he led a large group of people from the Lin family. Behind him was the Lin family's third young master, who had been stripped naked and thrown out by Xiao Bai. The Lin family's third young master had wrapped himself up tightly, glaring at Lin Wuying as he followed behind. Lin Wuying was the Lin family's first young master, the elder brother of the Lin family's third young master. He was also a talented alchemist in heavenly Mist City. Although he was far from being comparable to Nangong Wuk had always been Lin Wuying's nemesis. Lin Wuying was actually not handsome. In fact, he could even be considered a little fat. If someone did not know him and bumped into him on the streets, they would only think that he was some random passerby. There was also a group of people from the Zhang family. The eldest son of the Zhang family, Zhang Dongfang, had also come with his family. Zhang Dongfang, like Lin Wuying and Nangong Wuk, was an influential figure in heavenly Mist City. However, Zhang Dongfang was different from Nangong Wuk and Lin Wuying. His talent in alchemy was terrible to the point that it could even be considered trash. He was a weirdo in heavenly Mist City because heavenly Mist City was famous for its elixirs. Zhang Dongfang did not sell or refine elixirs in heavenly Mist City. Instead, he liked to sell cauldrons. According to him, he could not refine elixirs, but he could control them. To an alchemist, a good cauldron was no different from a good weapon. And that was how Zhang Dongfang became the largest supplier of cauldrons in heavenly Mist City. This caused his status in heavenly Mist City to rise higher and higher. Zhang Dongfang was a skinny man, very skinny, but his eyes were full of spirit. He had the shrewdness of a businessman, and when he looked around, it would cause one's hair to stand on end. The two groups of people met at the intersection and looked at each other impolitely. Lin Wuying and Zhang Dongfang nodded at each other. Although the two of them did not like each other, at their level, there were many things that needed to be understood. They were all here for Bu Fang's restaurant. Third young Master Lin was the younger brother of Lin Wuying. For him to be stripped naked and run around heavenly Mist City was a matter that concerned the reputation of a big family. It wasn't a serious matter, but it was also a very serious matter. If the instigator didn't receive any punishment, then the Lin family wouldn't have any deterrence in heavenly Mist City. Similarly, the Zhang family also had the same idea. After all, they were the two great families of heavenly Mist City. How could they allow a small restaurant to humiliate them? This face must be repaid. Furthermore, this incident happened in the territory of the Nangong clan, which made this matter even more interesting. Lin Wuying and Zhang Dongfang looked at each other before leading their men into the building. Huff, huff, the wind was blowing gently. The two groups of people stepped into the Nangong family's multi-taste fasting pill area and were somewhat dumbfounded. This place was somewhat different from what they had imagined. It was a little too cold and cheerless. What the hell happened? Was the Nangong family going bankrupt? The fat on Lin Wuying's face trembled slightly. Zhang Dongfang's shrewd eyes shone brightly. Both of them seemed a little excited. However, after walking for a while, they realized that the crowd in front of them had suddenly increased. The noise was so loud that it almost burst their eardrums. Is this the deserted restaurant you were talking about? Lin Wuying looked at third young Master Lin, who was hiding behind him, with a strange expression on his face. Third young Master Lin and young Master Zhang were a little dazed. They shouldn't have gone to the wrong place. This was the deserted restaurant that cooked excrement. Furthermore, there was only one restaurant in heavenly Mist City. How could they get it wrong? I guess so. Third young Master Lin replied with some uncertainty. The crowd had truly exceeded his expectations. That's good enough. Follow me. To dare to slap my Lin family's face, you really have guts. Lin Wuying said coldly. Then, he took the lead and squeezed through the crowd. The Lin family is handling some business. Unrelated people, please leave. Members of the Lin family stood on both sides of Lin Wuying, creating a path for him. The surrounding people also calmed down. Looking at Lin Wuying, they did not even dare to breathe loudly. The Lin family was here, Thinking back to the rumor of third young master Lin's streaking incident, the Lin family was here to cause trouble. Lin Wuying clasped his hands behind his back. With a big belly, he walked slowly. His body exuded a majestic aura. From afar, Zhang Dongfang looked at this scene and smiled faintly. Lin Wuying is so mighty. Come, let's go. With a loud bang, the members of the Zhang family opened up a path through the crowd. Zhang Dongfang walked toward the store with a smile on his face. Two prominent figures of Heavenly Mist City actually appeared in this cloud mist restaurant. At the same time, damn, this restaurant is going to be famous. This was the first thought that flashed through many people's minds. But soon their eyes widened. Damn, they came with bad intentions. This restaurant is going to be in trouble. This was their second thought. Looking at Lin Wuying and Zhang Dongfang walking toward the restaurant, many people's eyes widened and they sucked in a breath of cold air. The heirs of the three big families of Heavenly Mist City are actually all gathered in a small restaurant. This restaurant is not ordinary. However, there were also some people who revealed a playful look on their faces. Lin Wuying and Zhang Dongfang did not come with good intentions. This was a sign that they were going to stir up trouble. Inside the restaurant, Nangang Wuk was also there. Could it be that three prominent figures were going to clash? Thinking about this, everyone became extremely excited. Craning their necks, they kept peeking into the store. Lin Wuying and Zhang Dongfang walked to the entrance. Both of them turned around and looked at each other. Then, with a fake smile, they nodded and continued walking toward the restaurant. The moment they entered the restaurant, the first thing they saw was Nangang Wan, who was as beautiful as a blossoming rose. No matter where a beautiful woman was, she would always attract attention. The moment they saw Nangang Wan, their hearts skipped a beat. Could it be that this restaurant was backed by Nangang Wan? If it was Nangang Wan, then they would just have to settle this peacefully. They would just have to get the owner to apologize. Lin Wuying and Zhang Dongfang thought to themselves. However, when their gazes shifted downwards, they saw Nangang Wuk, who was wolfing down his food with grease dripping from his mouth. In an instant, both of their eyes shone with a sharp light. What the F***? Nangang Wuk was here as well. Then today's matter would definitely not be settled peacefully. If the owner of this store did not pay the price, he could forget about keeping this restaurant open. Nangang Wuk. The fat on Lin Wuying's face trembled violently. Nangang Wuk's name was practically shouted out through clenched teeth. Zhang Dongfang's face was also expressionless as he stared at Nangang Wuk. Lin Wuying and Zhang Dongfang's aggressive approach naturally attracted Bufang's attention. He looked at the two of them expressionlessly, not knowing what they were up to. When Nangang Wan heard the shout, she turned her head around. When she saw the two of them, a hint of surprise appeared on her face. Then, her petite mouth opened slightly. Why were these two fellows here? And that Lin Wuying? Nangang Wuk was the one who sold her to this damned fatty. Thinking of this, Nangang Wan's heart was filled with anger. Yo, what a coincidence. Are you here to eat as well? Nangang Wuk turned around and saw Lin Wuying and Zhang Dongfang. His mouth was stuffed with a large pig trotter as he spoke in a muffled voice. As he spoke, he even waved at the two of them. That's right. What a coincidence. Lin Wuying put on a fake smile as he stared coldly at Nangang Wuk. His gaze was simply like a resentful wife. Zhang Dongfang's gaze shifted away from Nangang Wuk and landed on Bufang. He smiled and asked calmly, "You are the owner of this store?" Bufang froze for a moment before nodding his head. Very good. You still have the guts to admit that you have slapped my Zhang family in the face. You are a real man. How do you think you should compensate my Zhang family? Zhang Dongfang smiled as he looked at Bufang. After listening to him, Bufang's face did not show the slightest bit of expression. So after all this time, these two fellows were here to cause trouble. Zhang family. Who is the Zhang family? If you're not ordering, then scram. Bufang could not be bothered to say more. Bufang did not have a good impression of the troublemakers in the store. How dare they tell me to scram? Not only did Zhang Dongfang not expect this, even Nangang Wan was stunned. Did owner but not know who Zhang Dongfang was? He was an influential figure in heavenly Mist City. He had broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles and was extremely powerful. He was the leader of the younger generation and the largest alchemy furnace supplier in heavenly Mist City. He actually told someone to scram? This was really exciting. At this moment, Lin Wuying also regained his senses and turned his gaze to Bufang. He did not have a smile on his face. This store actually had Nangong Wuk in it. If he did not destroy this store, he would not be Lin Wuying. You dare to strip the clothes of my Lin family? You are very courageous. This store can no longer continue operating. You should obediently follow me to my Lin family's dungeon to repent. Lin Wuiying's words were filled with hostility. The people outside were in an uproar. Indeed, this store was going to suffer a calamity, acting awesome for less than 3 seconds. When Bufang heard Lin Wuiying's words, the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch. Then, he tilted his head and looked at Lin Wuiying. Are you a stupid C***? Lin Wuiying glared at Bufang, and a murderous aura burst forth from him. Is this guy courting death? How dare he call me a stupid C***? Boom! Boom! A surging pressure of heaven and earth immediately surged out from his body, like the roar of thunder. Everyone around the store felt a heavy pressure, and many of them even took a few steps back in discomfort. The pressure of heaven and earth from a divine physique echelon expert was really strong. Many of them looked at Bufang with pity. How dare he call Lin Wuiying a stupid C***? Did he really become a stupid C*** now? How could the 3 influential figures of heavenly Mist City live up to their names? Causing trouble? Bufang narrowed his eyes and said calmly, No, you are the one courting death. Lin Wuiying said coldly, the fat on his body jiggling. Xiao Bai, someone is causing trouble. Bufang let out a light breath and shouted calmly. Then, Lin Wuiying's pupil shrank, because he felt a burst of purple light shooting out from the kitchen. That purple light actually caused his hair to stand on end. A huge puppet wearing armor slowly walked out from the kitchen, and its cold purple eyes landed on him. Lin Wuiying's body tensed up. Is this the divine physique echelon puppet? Oomph. Do you think you can provoke my Lin family with just a puppet? Lin Wuiying laughed coldly. However, he did not finish his sentence. Xiao Bai's mechanical voice resounded in everyone's mind. Troublemaker, you will be stripped. F***CK. Who dares to touch my brother-in-law? However, before Xiao Bai could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by a roar. Everyone looked at Nangong Wuk, who slammed the pork trotter bone on the table and stood up. Chapter 434. Who dares to touch my brother-in-law? Nangong Wuk's words rang out amidst the tense atmosphere. Everyone was slightly taken aback by his words. Everyone was dumbfounded and incredulous. Brother-in-law? Holy **T. Brother-in-law? So that's how it is. Is this the reason for this store's confidence? Oh my god, this is too creepy. No wonder goddess Nangong kept coming to this store. No wonder goddess Nangong dared to eat that **T-like dish. So, all of this was because of the word love? The owner of this Cloud Mist restaurant is goddess Nangong's husband? Oh my god, this is too shocking. Bufang was speechless. He really wanted to use the Black Turtle Constellation Wok to knock this Nangong Wuk out. What brother-in-law? When did he agree to be Nangong Wuk's brother-in-law? Nangong was also dumbfounded. When she regained her senses, her face flushed red. She glared at Nangong Wuk with eyes that seemed like they were about to spit fire. Bang! A ball of cyan alchemic flame appeared in Nangong Wan's palm. Nangong Wuk, if you were my brother, I would have killed you already. If you dare to speak nonsense again, I will immediately go back and destroy your precious heavenly crafts furnace. Nangong Wan screamed in anger. She really couldn't face this weirdo calmly. Lin Wuiying and Zhang Dongfang were speechless as they watched this scene unfold. Why did such an imposing sentence sound so strange when it came out of Nan Gong Wuk's mouth? Xiao Bai's purple eyes flickered. His words were interrupted by Nan Gong Wuk, and he was momentarily stunned. Nan Gong Wuk wiped his oily lips and chewed. Then he forcefully swallowed the delicious food into his stomach. His eyes widened as he let out a long breath. Awesome, little sister, don't deny it. You are such a prideful person. Only in front of owner would you throw away your image. I understand your heart. After all, I am your brother. Nan Gong Wuk looked at Nan Gong Wan. His ambiguous gaze made Nan Gong Wan wish she could burn him to ashes. Hey, don't talk nonsense. You're ruining my reputation and causing trouble in the store. Nan Gong Wan was still not angry. Bu Fong said expressionlessly. Nan Gong Wuk widened his eyes in shock. He looked at Bu Fong and thought, what do you mean? He actually refused? Isn't my little sister pretty? Isn't my little sister cute? Why aren't you willing to be my brother-in-law? Nan Gong Wuk scratched his head and turned his head to look at Nan Gong Wan. He helplessly said, little sister, you won't be able to get married. Nan Gong Wuk, don't play dumb. Are you sure about this person? Lin Wuying was enraged, and he interrupted Nan Gong Wuk's rambling with a loud roar. Nan Gong Wuk smiled and turned to look at Lin Wuying. It was rare for Lin Wuying to be so serious. His eyes shone brightly like an unsheathed sword, causing Lin Wuiying's heart to skip a beat. Nan Gong Wuk did not have the slightest hint of a smile on his face as he looked at Lin Wuiying arrogantly. He opened his mouth slightly and said slowly, take a guess. F***CK you're guessing. Do you want me to guess or not? Lin Wuiying was so frustrated that he almost vomited blood. You have been so arrogant for such a long time, and all you give me is a guess. Why was his fated enemy such a retard? Nan Gongwan was speechless as well. How embarrassing. Bu Fong was still expressionless. He patted Xiao Bai's stomach, and the purple light in Xiao Bai's eyes shone brightly again. Boom! The metal wings on Xiao Bai's back spread open, and it caused a huge gust of wind to blow in the store. Lin Wuiying and Zhang Dongfang were startled, and they looked at Xiao Bai warily. A Divine Realm puppet was a little difficult to deal with. A small store like this dares to go against the Lin family? However, Lin Wuiying did not care. He sneered and looked at Bu Fong as if he was looking at a dead man. The metal wings on Xiao Bai's back moved, and the countless metal knives started to vibrate, making clanking sounds as if they were about to shoot out. However, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Bai. Master Bai, don't be anxious. You should go and rest first. Let me deal with these two. Nan Gong Wuk's red hair was fluttering in the wind. He stood in front of Whitey and said with a smile, don't worry. After that, Nan Gong Wuk even patted Xiao Bai's stomach. Oh, it feels good. Nan Gong Wuk turned around and exclaimed in surprise. Bu Fong and Xiao Bai looked at him expressionlessly. Nan Gong Wuk, do you think I, Lin Wuiying, am afraid of you? Come on, fight! Lin Wuiying let out a long roar, and his body suddenly turned into a beam of light. His speed almost broke the sound barrier, and he rushed toward Nan Gong Wuk. Zhang Dongfang also narrowed his eyes. His body moved, and a whip leg wrapped with a huge amount of true energy smashed toward Nan Gong Wuk. The two divine physique echelon warriors directly attacked Nan Gong Wuk. The atmosphere in the store became solemn once again. Nan Gong Wuk squinted his eyes, and this time, his face was really serious. His red bangs fluttered, and it brushed against his serious and handsome face. True energy flowed, and Nan Gong Wuk's palm was suddenly ignited with a ball of white flame. Heaven and Earth Obsidian Flame. Nine Hell King Flame? Lin Wuiying's body suddenly stopped, and a trace of fear and envy flashed in his eyes. Heaven and Earth Obsidian Flame. It was a flame that every alchemist dreamed of. The white flame revolved on Nan Gong Wuk's palm, and it turned into a ring of fire. The ring of fire suddenly rushed toward Lin Wuiying. Boom! Lin Wuiying, who could not dodge in time, was directly sent flying out of the store. Zhang Dongfang arrived, and his leg, which seemed to be emitting a sharp knife energy, was ruthlessly smashing toward Nan Gong Wuk. However, all of a sudden, he felt his heart palpitate. Beside him, a figure suddenly rushed out at the speed of sound. Before he could swing his leg, he was directly knocked out of the store by that figure. Xiao Bai's eyes flickered with purple light. His fan-like palm grabbed Zhang Dongfang's head, and he ruthlessly rushed out of the store, smashing Zhang Dongfang's head onto the ground outside the store. The ground, which was reinforced by a magic array, was actually smashed into a deep pit. Troublemaker, strip as an example to others. Xiao Bai's eyes flickered, and he once again raised his hand, preparing to strip Zhang Dongfang. However, Zhang Dongfang was not someone to be trifled with. His body emitted a wave of energy, and it surged into the sky. Xiao Bai was sent flying. A faint golden alchemy furnace floated above Zhang Dongfang's head. He had used that alchemy furnace to send Xiao Bai flying. Swoosh! The hazy magic array of heavenly mist city flickered, and the broken ground was actually being repaired by an invisible force. What the? Lord Bai was sent flying? Nangong Wuk held a ball of white flame in his hand, and he exclaimed in surprise, "You should worry about yourself first." The white flame suddenly dispersed, and Lin Wuying's body was protected by an invisible wave of energy, isolating him from the scorching flames. Shameless. You actually used a 9th grade elixir, the fire immunity pill. Don't you have any shame? Nangong Wuk looked at Lin Wuying and said with dissatisfaction. Lin Wuying could not be bothered with Nangong Wuk. He waved both of his hands, and in an instant, a surge of true energy burst out from his body, and his figure became blurry in the air. In the air, 2 figures of Lin Wuying actually appeared. The Lin family's shadow technique. Nangong Wan, who was watching from afar, felt a chill in her heart. Lin Wuying was indeed an influential figure in Heavenly Mist City. He was even able to use the Lin family's signature technique. Swoosh! The 2 figures disappeared at the speed of sound, and the air seemed to be torn apart, letting out a rustling sound. A terrifying wave of energy spread out. Facing Lin Wuying, who had used the shadow technique, Nangong Wuk was still very calm. The tip of his feet lightly touched the ground, and his figure instantly soared into the sky. Boom! Lin Wuying blasted a huge crater in the spot where he was originally standing. Amidst the smoke and dust, a black figure rushed out, and with a sharp attack, it smashed toward Nangong Wuk. Nangong Wuk, who was floating in the air, raised his hand, and a white flame gushed out. Like a propeller, it propelled his figure forward. His speed was so fast that it was difficult to follow with the naked eye. Shadow technique? Do you think that just because you have mastered the shadow technique, you can act tough in front of me? With a swoosh, Nangong Wuk appeared behind Lin Wuying, and with a swift slap, he slapped the latter's head. Lin Wuying's heart skipped a beat, and he turned his head to look, but all he saw was an afterimage. In the next instant, Nangong Wuk appeared behind him once again. Why don't you continue acting? You even dared to touch my brother-in-law. Slap! Another crisp slap landed on Lin Wuying's head. Lin Wuying was so angry that he almost exploded. Slap, slap. Slap, slap, slap. As he slapped, Nangong Wuk became addicted to it. Suddenly, his hand was grabbed, and Lin Wuying's eyes turned bloodshot. Did you enjoy slapping me? Lin Wuying's voice was a little hoarse. Numerous black shadow threads drilled out from under his skin and wrapped around Nangong Wuk's arm. Nangong Wuk narrowed his eyes. So you found out. Then, did you enjoy touching my hand? Nangong Wuk retorted. Lin Wuying was stunned. All of a sudden, a ball of white flame burned on Nangong Wuk's hand, which was wrapped by the black shadow. Boom! The flame burst out, and Lin Wuying was sent flying by a huge shockwave, smashing into an elixir store in the distance. Rip! The shadow lost its support, turned into black smoke, and dissipated. Nangong Wuk stood in the sky, looking at Lin Wuying playfully. How can a hand that plays with fire be touched so casually? Next time, you better be careful. Rumble! The ground shook violently. Nangong Wuk looked to his side in astonishment. Then he saw the scene of Zhang Dongfang being smashed into the ground by White Yi's fist. The ground had just started to heal when another deep pit appeared. Dong! 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 3 golden elixir furnaces shot out, and Xiao Bai was sent flying. Zhang Dongfang coughed out a mouthful of blood, and his eyes were filled with hatred. He did not expect this puppet to be so strong. The metal wings on Xiao Bai's back flapped, and his purple eyes continued to lock on Zhang Dongfang. 3 golden elixir furnaces floated around Zhang Dongfang, and each of them was engraved with a mysterious array. It seemed to be a bit mysterious. All of a sudden, Zhang Dongfang's mouth twitched. Why did he have to tangle with a puppet? Couldn't he just kill the guy controlling the puppet? Zhang Dongfang's pupil shrank, and a murderous aura surged. He casually waved his hand, and the 3 golden elixir furnaces flew toward Bufang, who was watching from afar. The 3 elixir furnaces were powerful, and it seemed like they were going to smash the air. "Brother-in-law, be careful." Nangong Wuk was shocked, and he blurted out. Nangong Wan's heart shuddered, but when she heard Nangong Wuk's words, she was infuriated. "Brother-in-law, my ass." Bufang was very calm, to the point that Zhang Dongfang found it hard to believe. In the next moment, Zhang Dongfang saw black smoke curling around the arm of the calm kid, and a pitch-black wok appeared. Dong! The 3 dazzling golden elixir furnaces smashed onto the pitch-black wok. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.